I thought it must be because of your wounds, Roswal.
In point of fact, Roswal, lying on the bed, bore wounds that were quite deep. Even if he was to return to the mansion for treatment, he couldn't be moved without having recovered to at least some minimal degree. But Roswal shook his head, seemingly telling her that was not the reason. And then,
Currently, all present find ourselves imprisoned in the sanctuary, Ram, the villagers, and myself. Now that you have entered, that includes the two of you as well.
Huh?
Subaru and Amelia were both dumbstruck at the casual yet explosive statement.
Imprisoned? That doesn't, well, have a very nice ring to it.
Somehow, Subaru managed to recover from the initial shock and wring out those words. Amelia managed to swallow down her own surprise, giving the injured Roswal a painful stare as she said,
Then, Roswal, don't tell me that those wounds were from...
Amelia was in shock as she combined the sight of him wounded with his earlier statement. Neither could Subaru, having arrived at the same thought, conceal his own shock.
There's someone in this village who can overpower Roswal, hurt him this much, and keep him captive. That's no laughing matter.
Subaru touched a hand to his chin, nervously pondering a foe powerful far beyond his expectations. Roswal was the kingdom's preeminent magic user. The demon beast disturbance had proven that in earnest. Subaru could not believe that anyone could easily put Roswal through this much pain and suffering. Who in the world had done this to...
What? You're still doing chit-chat. You shouldn't push a wounded guy too much. Make a modeled kuchibashi run, and it turns black. You know?
So...
Surprised by the sudden voice, Subaru turned around in a hurry. At the end of his gaze was Garfield, who'd appeared at the entrance to the room. He took a look around the room and whistled toward Amelia.
Hey now, what's this greeting all of a sudden? Wah? Are you that ticked off with me?
I'm being on the safe side, since the earlier conversation made me think the most dangerous person here is you.
Garfield audibly clenched his teeth in amusement. Amelia stood on guard with Subaru and Roswal at her back, seemingly to shield them from him. Being shielded by Amelia was a thing in itself, but Subaru blinked hard at a separate issue. Namely,
Hey, what did you do with Otto? He was with you, right?
Ah! What, that noisy guy? Him! Well, you get it, don't ya?
Garfield nodded defiantly, and his sharp gaze turned even sharper. Subaru, sensing bottomless hostility from his statement, felt the hairs on his back stand up. Amelia lowered her stance as if she had the same sense from Garfield as he. The atmosphere grew strained. At the drop of a pin, combat between the two would become unavoidable.
Ha! Fine, if you want a piece of me, I'll be happy to. Da!
It is not fine at all. Know your place, stupid Garf.
But the atmosphere primed to explode was smashed apart by the powerful impact sound of an iron tray. Circling around his back during the exchange, it was Ram who had brought Garfield down with a single, merciless blow. As Garfield writhed in agony, Ram looked down at him, sighing as she addressed the others.
Lady Amelia, Subaru, it is equally unsightly of you to jump to conclusions so quickly. Garf has nothing to do with Master Roswal's injuries. He may look like a simpleton, but he is not quite that thoughtless. Is that so?
Yes, Lady Amelia, he had nothing to do with it. I was about to say so that very moment.
Roswal's utterly shameless exaggeration left Amelia lowering her arms, astonished. Then she rushed over to Garfield, kneeling upon the floor in great haste.
I'm very sorry. I completely misunderstood. I was certain you'd eaten Otto or something.
Wow, Amelia Tan, your ideas are really something. Even I didn't think he'd gone that far.
Though it was certainly true, Subaru suspected Otto's life had been in danger, he hadn't suspected Garfield of doing such a thing. Following in the flustered Amelia's footsteps, Subaru checked to see how Garfield was doing. Garfield, shaking the head Ram had struck with that hearty blow, opened his mouth wide at the pair's assertions.
As if I'd munch on a guy like that. He's noisy, and he says stuff a guy ain't emotionally prepared for, so I ditched him back at the dragon carriage.
You're being pretty vague there, and you kick up a ruckus even without Otto.
His suggestive demeanor had caused a misunderstanding that had nearly led to a great disaster. That disaster had been averted by Ram.
Thanks a bundle, Ram. Don't want any unnecessary bloodshed. Hold on. Your tray's all bent out of shape.
A necessary loss to stop Garf. Next time, it would seem I should use the corner, not the flat of the tray.
Ram took inspiration from the bent tray for how she would deal with him next time. Setting Ram's demeanor aside, Garfield, the victim of her pummeling, plopped himself into a chair in a corner of the room. Then he rubbed his head as he looked at Ram and said,
Ram, if you feel sorry about that at all, how about some tea?
Please wait while I head out briefly to gather fallen leaves.
Making a sound from her nose at the grandiose request, Ram really did head out of the house. Subaru had to wonder just what she intended to do with fallen leaves. Though that tugged at his mind, what also tugged at it was the ardor with which Garfield watched Ram's back as she departed.
I was wondering this from the exchange at the village entrance too, but what? You have a thing for Ram?
She's a fine woman, ain't she? Ain't exactly weird for males to be attracted to strong, capable females.
We're not dividing chicks by male and female, so stop chirping about that. Sheesh.
Garfield had replied openly to Subaru's question, but his road to romance was treacherous. Ram's affection for Roswal ran deep, hanging over his prospects almost like a curse. That was an unmistakable side of romance in any world. But
Well, then, based on that reaction, you don't look like you talked about the important stuff yet. You're free to turn into pieces of garbage if you want, but you should talk about it to Lady Amelia, at least.
To me?
with Ram absent from the room, Garfield tapped his foot as he refocused the conversation. Amelia was surprised that her own name was in his statement, but Garfield paid her surprise no heed, sending his dangerous look stabbing right through Roswal.
The fact she got past the barrier means she's wrapped up in our business. What the hell's with this peaceful, pleasant conversation? You people playing around or something?
I'm not sure why you have a bee in your bonnet, but this business we're wrapped up in doesn't sound unrelated to this whole imprisoned business.
Garfield, as snippy as ever, narrowed his eyes at Subaru's assertion, feeling as if he was facing off against a fierce, overbearing beast. Subaru put the conversation to that point in order in his head and said,
According to Roswal, this isn't imprisonment by brute force. Regardless of how you look and act, you can't be short-tempered and violent enough to...
For an instant, being hurled by Garfield reemerged in his memories.
to do that kind of thing.
Subaru, you seemed really unsure just now.
Subaru, on the receiving end of a rare quip from Amelia, looked straight at Garfield. Receiving his gaze, Garfield said, "Go on," urging Subaru to continue.
I'll listen. If you ain't the dirt stuck to a half-demon's foot, that is.
Half-elf. Next time I'll get Roswal to light your butt on fire.
Garfield lowered his head as Subaru shamelessly proclaimed he would borrow another's power for his retribution. At his reaction, Subaru lifted a finger, turning that finger to indicate the sanctuary outside.
I'll continue. Now that imprisonment by force has been crossed off the list, what other way can I think of? To be honest, I don't have much information to go on, but there's one thing that sticks out in my mind.
You mean the barrier?
That's right. You're so smart, Amelia Tan.
Coming up with the answer on her own, Amelia had sounded unsure in her answer, but her view was in line with Subaru's own. If neither Garfield's brawn nor Roswal's injuries was responsible for the imprisonment in the sanctuary, it left the barrier as the only possibility. The barrier with the special effect originally meant to protect the sanctuary. If it had been a simple barrier, Subaru might not have come to such a far-fetched idea, but at any rate,
When she came in contact with the barrier, Amelia fainted. According to Garfield, that's not an effect limited to Amelia. It's like that for most of the people living in the sanctuary, he said.
In other words, Subaru, you think that it's the barrier's effect that's keeping Rosewall and the others in here and preventing them from returning to the mansion.
There you go again. Exactly. Wow, Amelia Tan and I are in perfect sync today.
Elated that they were thinking along the same lines, Subaru went for a high five, but when Amelia tilted her head rather than play along, Subaru gently eased his hand down and looked at Garfield.
So, that's what I was thinking, but am I right?
Sorry, I've got to drop my assessment of ya 3 steps down from a piece of mud.
That assessment is pretty out there, but, I'll aim to gradually raise it back up.
Taking that as a roundabout way of saying, yes, Subaru nodded and looked over to Rosewall. As he did so, Roswell closed one eye at Subaru's, and Amelia's thought processes, amusement resting in his yellow eye.
My May, there truly has been quite a change in the span of several days. The optimism in both Subaru and Lady Amelia is quite reassuring. It was well worth making my heart that of an Oni and letting matters be.
I have a mountain of things to say to you later about that letting matters be part. Keep in mind, if you weren't wounded, the iron fist of my anger wouldn't be a soft thing.
My, how frightening.
With Roswell in such high spirits, Subaru brandished a clenched fist. Whether he'd have seriously let Roswell have it was another matter, but his irritation at the previous statement was no act. He'd give the man a tongue-lashing later for his lack of countermeasures against the witch cult's attack during his absence.
But right now, talking about the barrier comes first. Is that reaction the cause of the imprisonment?
I cannot call it correct in the strictest sense. However, it is not far off from the truth. It is a fact that the cause of our being hindered here in the sanctuary is a circumstance involving that barrier.
The barrier had the power to rob mixed people of their consciousness and make intruders get lost in the forest, but it did no harm to those of mixed blood already inside. It lacked the power to hinder Roswell and the others on its own.
So the fact you've been stuck here anyway means
That's 'cause the people under the barrier's effect are getting in their way.
The answer to his question was bluntly revealed from the mouth of one of the people concerned. When he turned toward the speaker of that ferocious declaration, the sharp, green eyes of the golden-haired man of mixed blood glared back at Subaru and the others.
Garfield?
Way I see it, it's a simple story. As long as the barrier's up, we can't get out of the sanctuary. The barrier's got nothing to do with ya. But that ain't very fair, is it?
Then, because you want to get out but can't, you're holding Rosewall and the others captive. Even to the point someone gets hurt like this?
Subaru, feeling like the issue had just become very petty, felt anger toward the short-tempered act. However, when he pressed the issue, Garfield grimaced unpleasantly.
Say whatever you want about it. But it's not like it don't have anything to do with ya.
So for the same reason, you don't intend to let us go either?
No! It ain't that. It's way simpler. Your precious little princess can't get out of the sanctuary for the same reason me and the grannies can't, damn it.
Subaru gaped when Garfield laughed loudly and pointed at Amelia as he made the statement. Truly, he was fed up with himself for not having realized such an obvious possibility. It was exactly as Garfield had said. It was already proven beyond doubt the barrier's effect was active upon Amelia. She, too, was a prisoner of the sanctuary.
Can't anything be done about that? Like, right, if the barrier knocks people out when they touch it, how about having them carried out by people not under its effect?
Ah, Subaru, amazing. We could use that method to get people, an amusing suggestion, but 'tis best avoided, if you do not seek to leave us as soulless husks, at least.
Yet again, a third party intervened in Subaru's conversation that day. The intervention of an unfamiliar voice caused Subaru to turn toward the entrance. Just like Garfield had done earlier, a small figure was standing there, whereupon Subaru let out an A. She had long pink hair, doll-like beauty, and pointed ears, all things he had seen before. The features were without doubt those of the elfin girl Subaru had encountered in the forest.
You're that Hot, 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 hot.
Here, Baruso. Tea, as requested.
Subaru, surprised by the reunion, instantly began to speak. But the sudden feeling of a hot, steaming drink pressed against his cheek made Subaru yell from the burning pain, tumbling onto the room's floor. The clumsy servants having returned, Ram gazed down at Subaru's state with a look of scorn.
Such a big fuss. How unsightly for a man.
That has nothing to do with being a man or not. You burned my cheek, you know! What were you thinking?
Sitting up in the face of heartless, merciless abuse, Subaru vented his grudges with tearful eyes. It was hardly Ram's first act of violence toward him, but this was the least logical of them all. Subaru was enraged at the high-handedness toward him.
Goodness. Please keep quiet about the elf from before,
Said Ram, and pressed a damp cloth to Subaru's cheek, as she said,
Huh?
Subaru said, dumbfounded and wide-eyed as Ram was so close that she was practically touching his ear. However, Ram said nothing about that and handed a different steaming cup to Garfield and said,
The very essence of crude tea.
Ain't that usually said with more, oh, modesty?
It is the juice from fallen leaves. You should be grateful it was poured by Ram's hands and drink it to the bottom.
Subaru put his own thoughts aside as he watched the terrible treatment she gave the man.
Subaru, are you all right? Should I cool your cheek with ice?
Ugh, it's okay, I'm all right. I'm used to Ram doing crazy stuff. It's like an everyday ritual.
Is that so? When did things become like that while my back was turned?
That prompted Subaru to reminisce about the tragedies of his life as a servant. But it was not that upon which Subaru's mind was focused. Rather, it was Ram's whisper into his ear. She told him to keep quiet about the elf, but his questions about that were soon answered.
I'd heard young Gar brought in humans from the outside again. Quite a rambunctious youngster.
Speaking those words, the elf concerned lowered her eyelids. The voice, the expression, the emotions lacking from the earlier individual. They felt as if they came from someone very old, something that threw Subaru off.
And you are?
I apologize for my late introduction, Lady Amelia. I am Ryuzu Bilma. I suppose you might call me this village's representative. As you can see, I am a tottering old woman. All right, you are as old as you look.
When the girl calling herself Ryuzu bowed and named herself, her declaration made Amelia seem conflicted. Subaru's reaction was the same as hers. Apparently, he wasn't the only one thrown for a loop at Ryuzu, who looked like a young girl declaring herself a tottering old woman. On the outside, she looked like an adorable early teen. She was dressed only in a white robe, one that made it impossible to see her limbs past her cuffs and hem. Furthermore, her words and actions from her years of maturity clashed with her appearance.
It's a lowly hag in the flesh. I thought I might see that stereotype here someday.
To think I would be called hag upon a first meeting. The youngster is ruder than even young Gar and young Roz.
When you add lowly to the pejorative hag, it goes from an insult to a badge of honor. It is a status highly esteemed back in my homeland. No, I'm serious.
Replying with appropriate flippancy, Subaru tried to somehow put a lid on the chaos inside his own mind. Ryuzu was the spitting image of the girl in the forest, but the air she gave off was clearly different. And Ram had forbidden him from speaking of the other girl's existence. Something's going on here, said Subaru's instincts, ringing like an alarm bell, but…
Very well then. So you must be Baruso, Youngsu, in other words.
Paired with the young Gar thing, calling me that makes it sound like we'll start getting treated as brothers, but that's fine. Just please at least remember that my proper name is Subaru Natsuki.
Subaru introduced himself to nip the mistaken name, obtained via Rem, in the bud. His line caused Ryuzu to slap her hip, saying, I get it, in an elderly fashion before she said,
Now, young Gar, would you be a sensible boy and yield your chair to me?
Ya get ticked off when I treat you like a hag, but you turn into a tottering old woman when it's convenient. Damn it.
Did you say something?
Nuttin'.
Garfield clicked his tongue and yielded the chair in which he sat to Ryuzu. As he did, he brushed some dust off the chair and, in deeply devoted fashion, lent Ryuzu a hand so that she could sit in it more easily.
Somehow you seem like some hick from the countryside whose rudeness is all mouth.
Oh, shut up, third rate. What are you comparing me to? Who? This tea's awful. It tastes like grass.
Garfield grimaced spectacularly at the fallen leaf tea Ram had poured for him. Subaru took advantage of that interlude to get the topic back on track again, as he said.
So, now that Ryuzu is with us, let's get back to the earlier topic. What's your basis for saying my idea's bad?
Earlier, Miss Ryuzu said something really scary sounding, but
Amelia glanced sidelong at Ryuzu. Subaru nodded at her words.
She said, soulless husk, sir. Right. What did you mean by that?
I meant exactly what I said. When the mixed come into contact with the barrier, they lose consciousness, but I cannot call that impression quite correct. The souls of the mixed are repelled by the barrier. It is more correct to say.
The souls are repelled?
Amelia didn't seem to quite get that explanation for the mechanism by which the barrier knocked people out. Subaru gawked at Ryuzu, somehow managing to digest her words.
In other words, if the mixed force their way across the barrier, body and soul will be separated from each other, and that'll leave the soul inside the barrier without a body. That's how I should interpret husk?
Ho ho, the boy understands rather quickly. That is the long and short of it.
When Subaru replied with his own interpretation, the impressed Ryuzu smiled. After she saw that smile, Amelia's eyes were still wide with surprise when she looked at Roswal.
But how is that related to Roswal's injuries? If the barrier's power does not function for anyone except those of mixed blood, someone else inflicted those wounds on Roswal, and it wasn't Garfield, right?
Amelia asked. Roswal's shoulders sank.
As Ram said earlier, he is not quite that thoughtless of a man. Though I do not deny that, Garfield is capable of inflicting such pain upon me.
Serious?
Subaru was aghast.
He is serious.
Ram's brief words affirmed they were true. It meant a great deal coming from Ram, both a realist and someone placing Roswal at the summit of her mental pyramid. Apparently, Garfield had the might to back up his claim to the title of world's strongest man. The exchange was another way of saying, there is no escaping this imprisonment by force.
Me, I feel like I should be kind of insulted by the way you're talking. The thin Ram, don't make a scary face like that. Anyway, it wasn't me. He got hurt like that, 'cause the trial rejected him.
Whether he knew the depth of their surprise or not, Garfield violently dragged the conversation forward. Subaru gaped and gulped, calming his mind down somewhat as he voiced his thoughts.
First, the sanctuary has a barrier from a witch, and now there's a trial. Just gets better and better.
New problems only added to the number of topics. When Subaru scowled at that fact, Roswal replied, I suppose so, and stroked the bandages over his chest as he continued.
However, this is most likely the final piece of information to be added. Those who are qualified obtain the right to take the trial to lift the barrier. My wounds are proof of what happens when that precondition is disregarded.
Disregarded the precondition for the trial?
The precondition is to have blood affected by the barrier, in other words, to have mixed blood. If anyone else undertakes the trial, their flesh is repelled and shredded.
Subaru and Amelia simultaneously gasped in surprise, so that was the cause of Roswal's own body being bandaged to such an extent. Were it not for the blood-stained bandages, Roswal's wounded body would be naked. Such was the cruel state he was in. Countless lacerations ran across his upper body, almost like a bomb had exploded inside him, with blood oozing out that very moment. It seemed like perhaps healing magic had little effect, or perhaps something was continuing to wound him afresh.
So, let me get straight to issuing you our demands.
Speaking those words, Garfield pointed straight toward the shocked Subaru, no, toward Amelia. He seemed to be saying that Amelia was needed to resolve the circumstances involving the sanctuary. With Amelia's breath catching as she gazed at that finger, Garfield continued, saying,
Lift the barrier around the sanctuary. To do that, take the trial. Until that's lifted, no one leaves. Not that you personally can leave anyway.
The instant Subaru stepped into the place called the cathedral, he felt a change in the air. It was not a bad change. Surprise registered where, until that moment, a quiet atmosphere without conversation had reigned, followed by a cascade of attention and the onrush of joy.
Master Subaru. Oh, thank goodness you are safe. Is everyone else all right?
The ones welcoming Subaru when he showed himself were the people lodging in the cathedral, the people of Earlham Village who had evacuated, fleeing from the witch cult to the sanctuary together with Ram. They looked happy to see Subaru, but their situation was little different from when they had left the village. Subaru was relieved that they had not been treated poorly in the sanctuary, though.
I'm the one who told you to take refuge here, after all. I'm glad you're all safe.
Master Subaru, it is we who are glad you are safe. How is the village and the others?
Yeah, relax about that, okay? We drove off the dangerous folks, and the people evacuating to the royal capital are back in the village. No one's hurt. They're all in great shape.
Oh,
When Subaru pounded his chest, giving the villagers his metaphorical stamp of approval, all the villagers' faces brightened. Subaru responded to their reactions with a smile as he finally took a look around the cathedral. The stonework structure had a high ceiling and was filled with the solemn, serene air that lived up to the name. So far as Subaru knew, the atmosphere was probably close to that of the chapel of a church, because the temple site was fairly large. It was able to comfortably accommodate the 50-odd residents who had evacuated. Put frankly, there had to be many inconveniences involved, and they did raise such dissatisfactions with Subaru as they said, "We're worried about the fields and livestock we left behind. Besides, we're separated from our children too. But are the Lord's injuries all right? Such terrible wounds for our sakes." Their statements, showing less concern about the disorder in their daily lives than pure concern for the future, hurt Subaru's heart. Here they were, far from their families with their own Lord bearing wounds. The seeds of their anxieties were inexhaustible. But Subaru's feat had brought him there to bring an end to their situation. For that reason, among others, Subaru loudly cleared his throat, drawing all eyes of the villagers upon him.
Listen to me, everyone. As you know, the dangerous elements threatening the village have been driven off. The other group that evacuated has returned to the village, and they're waiting for you to return as we speak.
The moment Subaru reached waiting for you to return, shadows of anxiety came over the villagers' faces. Naturally, they too knew why they remained in the sanctuary. They also knew Roswal had sustained his wounds with the aim of liberating them. However,
Looks like you all know that getting out of here won't be easy, but it's all right. After all, there's a girl right here to undertake the trial to free everyone.
Master Subaru, you can't mean?
Whoa, nah, it isn't me. If I could, I'd do it in a heartbeat, but
Subaru scratched his head with a pained smile at the reaction from the freshly enthused villagers. His words were no lie. If he could be the challenger, he'd take the trial without a moment's hesitation. But Subaru did not fulfill the conditions to challenge the barrier. Accordingly, the one who would undertake the trial would be...
I'm sure you all know her, the royal candidate Amelia. She's facing the trial.
Subaru's declaration sent the villagers gasping once more. Nodding back at their reactions, Subaru reached a beckoning hand toward the entrance to the temple, and the girl waiting there for him. After a moment's hesitation, Amelia slowly revealed herself, silver hair flowing behind her. Her cheeks were stiff from tension as Subaru stood at her side and surveyed the villagers. Those gazes had rejected her once before. Now she had the courage to face them without the identification scrambler robe. Even so, Amelia bit her lip, bowing her head deeply then and there.
I am sorry to have made you wait. In place of your lord, Roswal El Mathers, I shall undertake the trial of this sanctuary. I may not seem very formidable, but I'm sure I will overcome and liberate everyone from this barrier.
At first, she was timid, with little confidence, but by the end, she was speaking more quickly and fluently. Emilia's proclamation left the villagers perplexed as they looked at one another's faces. Once before, Emilia had extended her hand to them only to be rebuffed. That rupture had hardly been repaired. All Subaru had done was slam a lid on top of it so that you couldn't see the cracks and punt the can down the road. As far as the villagers were concerned, Emilia was stuck in their stereotypes of half-elves. Emilia kept her head lowered as she awaited the villagers' response. Her lips were tightly pursed, and on her face, Subaru saw resolve and a hint of fear about the prospect of rejection. But a figure walked closer to Emilia. The old woman who was both the head of Earlham Village and someone who had often touched Subaru's butt. Sensing her presence, Emilia lifted her head. The old woman nodded and spoke.
A few days ago, you lowered your head to us, and we rejected your assistance. In spite of this, you reach your hand out to us once more. Why? For the sake of the royal selection. To maintain the support of the populace, you lower your head and say that you shall save us. That is natural. I have no complaint about this, if that is indeed the case. But what we find frightening is that we do not understand the reason why.
You don't understand the reason why?
Emilia asked, eyes shaking in bewilderment at the old woman.
We rejected you because you are a half-elf. We do not understand the reason why you, a half-elf, would do this again, despite that. That is what we wish to know. And that you are not a witch beyond our ability to comprehend.
Emilia was surprised. She was being compared to a witch to her face, and yet she'd been asked to deny she was one. It was probably something she was experiencing for the first time. No doubt Emilia had been always tormented by discrimination that permitted no rebuttal. The conclusion simply forced upon her. For an instant, Emilia shifted her eyes towards Subaru, who was standing by her side. Her gaze clung to him, apparently in search of an answer. Subaru tucked in his chin, nudging her forward without a word. It was Emilia's own words they were seeking. Borrowed words would be meaningless.
I have no confidence that I can give an eloquent reply to your question. Right now, I do not have any really convincing words to make you all accept what I say.
Reluctantly, and with Subaru's affirming nod pressing her onward, Emilia began to speak. With her own clumsy words, she sought to explain why she wanted to do this.
It's just, it may have been a short time, but I spent the last several days with the family members who aren't here with you. So I thought all over again, families need to be together.
Emilia touched her own chest as if looking for something, stroking the dim crystal hanging from her neck. Inside it was surely sleeping family of her own, family she could not speak with at the moment, for reasons unclear. However, believing that her feelings about family were not different from theirs, Emilia surveyed everyone's face.
I want to return you to your families. That is, not a promise I made in that village, but it is something I swore to myself. That is what I want to fulfill. That's all. I haven't really thought much about maintaining your support and so on, but if possible, I'd like everyone to... No, rather. I want to get along with all of you.
At the very end, Emilia's words weakened, and the pace of her speech slowed. Once she had spoken her piece, she and the villagers were mutually silent. The silence continued for seconds, perhaps tens of seconds.
Lady Emilia,
You... Yes.
we know this is very selfish of us to say. However, please take good care of us.
For a moment, Emilia looked like her thought process had ground to a halt, unable to digest the meaning of those words. But when she saw the old woman's head bowing before her, she finally grasped their meaning.
I may be a greenhorn, but please bear with me.
No one says greenhorn anymore.
Subaru gave a pained smile, instantly tossing his own quip on top of the obsolete language sailing out. Emilia had no time to deal with it, for she was busy dealing with other villagers' follow-up comments, engaging in scattered conversation. Satisfied at the turn of events, Subaru distanced himself from the throng and headed to the entrance of the cathedral. And there stood...
Lady Amelia seems to have changed somewhat. Did you put her up to this, Barusu?
This is something she came up with on her own. You shouldn't go crediting someone's determination to someone else, you know?
I suppose not. Ram is at fault this time.
Ram apologized for the somewhat cold impression she gave from the entrance concerning the exchanges taking place at that moment. The apology, rare coming from her, surprised Subaru, which made Ram narrow her pink eyes.
What? Even Ram apologizes when she feels she has done wrong. It simply does not happen very often.
From time to time, I'm seriously envious of that brimming with confidence attitude you have.
It is not a matter of confidence whatsoever. It is natural providence that Ram is correct so often.
The way Ram crossed her arms in self-affirmation, grander than mere overconfidence, ever could be made Subaru's shoulders sink.
With this, Lady Amelia shall undertake the trial. She has received voices of support from the villagers, just as Master Rosewall wished.
Hey, stop saying it like that. Emilia doesn't calculate things like that, you know?
And you intend to shoulder the burden of the dirty work yourself, Barusu. How heroic!
Ram's slender lips eased up a little as she bantered with Subaru in sarcastic fashion. But Subaru didn't feel genuine scorn for him from either her eyes or the tenor of her voice. Perhaps what he sensed was distress. He couldn't say. That's not like her. Ram's kindness just happened to be difficult to see on the surface.
So you're worried about Amelia too, huh? I'm a little surprised.
Ram is the epitome of kindness and benevolence. Besides, if Lady Amelia can perform as Master Rosewall hopes, there will be meaning to his bodies having been whittled down like that. Of course I am concerned.
Rosewall went pretty far, putting his own body on the line.
Ram's morose statement put a pained face on Subaru as he let those words trickle out. As to what Rosewall's true intentions regarding the sanctuary were, Subaru could only sigh. Rosewall, lacking the proper qualifications, had undertaken the trial only to be rejected by the enchantment, suffering grave wounds that left him at death's door. Such a reckless challenge could only have calculations bordering on madness behind it, things no normal person could even conceive of. Passing the trial was unavoidable if the barrier of the sanctuary was to be lifted, and faced with this fact, Rosewall had taken the initiative, sustaining wounds as a result. That even Rosewall, in an attempt to fulfill his duties as Lord, was unable to succeed in the trial had established to all his people the difficulty of the matter. He had acted without hesitation before his people, wounding his name, reputation, and even body in the process.
And here comes Amelia out of the blue, galloping in to undertake the trial and liberate the sanctuary.
The residents of this sanctuary and the refugees held captive, either way, they shall have a great deal for which to thank Lady Amelia. It would be good if they thought of her being a half-elf as a trifling matter.
People's hearts don't dance in your palm that much. Besides, Amelia doesn't weigh things like that. You and I both need to have that fact sink in.
Subaru watched from a distance as the villagers interacted with Amelia at the center of the cathedral with hard, smiling faces. He understood Rosewall's thinking. This was a necessary challenge if she was to make it to the end of the royal selection ahead. He could appreciate the true intent behind Rosewall's telling Amelia this place would, at some point, be necessary to her, but he could not raise both hands high in approval. This was Subaru's stubbornness at work.
Incidentally, Barusu, there really is nothing wrong with your body?
Yeah, no problem. I wasn't lying when I said as much when I talked about the teleport. Even though Rosewall got all beat up like that, I only fainted. Dunno what to say.
I suppose you should be grateful to have such a puny gait.
It's the truth, so I can't argue. But geez.
Raising his voice at the very blunt remark, Subaru gave his hips a big twist on the spot before continuing.
I was surprised that the ruin I teleported to was the place for the trial. Plus, there's the thing about bad stuff happening to unqualified people trying to get in. Totally a trap that kills on first sight.
You saw from Master Roswell's wounds, right? Even someone blessed with only an average gait should receive a rather stiff punishment. There is no telling what would have happened to Lady Amelia if she'd entered unawares, either.
You think Frederica planned it like that?
Subaru lowered his voice and aired the suspicion he'd been harboring for a while. Ram sank into thought for a brief moment, then closed one eye, as she said,
I wonder. The circumstantial evidence suggests Frederica planned something. In point of fact, Lady Amelia only avoided such a fate by a hairbreadth, escaping by Barusu's relatively noble sacrifice.
Hey, don't correct that. Well, I don't mind you correcting the sacrifice part because I got through it fine, but if I had sacrificed myself, call it noble even if it's a lie.
I shall take it under advisement. In regards to Frederica, there is something I ought to tell you, Barusu.
Following that preamble, Ram confirmed the state of the area around her with a sharp gaze. It was as if she wanted to be careful that no one overheard their conversation. No, it was not as if at all. Ram approached a half-step closer to Subaru, her voice a whisper as she spoke.
Not everyone living in the sanctuary supports being liberated from it.
What do you mean by that?
I add, there is also the matter of the elf being hidden from Miss Ryuzu and Garf, as well as Frederica's actions. But Miss Ryuzu is only the titular leader, guiding the militants like Garf, among the residents like Garf. Among the residents, there are also those who do not desire liberation from the sanctuary and who choose to remain sheltered within the barrier.
Sheltered inside the barrier? What's up with that?
Subaru, knitting his brows at Ram's warning, indicated incomprehension toward the behind-the-scenes maneuvering. If all was according to Garfield's explanation, everyone living in the sanctuary was of mixed blood. Naturally, that meant they were affected by the barrier and unable to leave, so long as the barrier existed at least.
They are fine with this. To those who wish to stay, the current state, with minimal interaction with the outside, is ideal. And thus, to break this state is highly troublesome to them.
You think Frederica's working with folks like that?
It is possible. At present, it is mere supposition based on the available information.
With Ram's subtext sounding like "do not even suggest I am being emotional," Subaru backed off and dropped the subject. However, the words left Subaru twisting his lips, his internal nervousness undiminished. Reflexively, his hand touched the white handkerchief tied around his own neck.
And that is? A rather old-fashioned protective charm, yes?
Petra, a cute girl in the village. She gave this to me before I left. She was hired as a new maid to help Frederica out at the mansion. That's why I'm worried.
If Frederica was operating from a position of malice, it was quite possible she'd take Petra hostage. He'd never forgive himself if something happened to the girl who'd offered her cooperation in such good faith. Even more than that, Rem was back at the mansion. He'd spoken exhaustively to Frederica about just how important the girl was, both to him and to the other people at the mansion. But Ram exhaled and said, "Ah, that," in reply to Subaru's misgivings, then continued.
Rest at ease. Frederica would never do ill to a new worker at the mansion. She has surely not fallen into heresy such as that. You need not be concerned for the girl.
Do you trust Frederica, or do you not trust Frederica? Which is it?
I know not what she schemes, but that Frederica is indeed Frederica. I do not doubt.
Having asserted the point with such force, Ram averted her gaze from Subaru's face. She folded her slender arms and motioned with her chin, indicating Amelia at the center of the cathedral.
Be careful, Barusu. The most certain means for those opposed to liberating the sanctuary to achieve their aims is to cause Lady Amelia harm. We do not know who our enemies are. Remain ever vigilant.
So this is secret from Ryuzu and Garfield too, huh? Those two being opposed to liberation is too far-fetched, I suppose.
Even if those two are not involved, someone related to them might be. It is best that as few people know as possible, even if one of them has very loose lips, yes.
Subaru couldn't even manage a groan as she drove the implication in like a nail, making it painfully clear just whom she meant. Either way, now that he was in the sanctuary, Ram's warning was exceptionally important. In particular, he'd never have known there was an anti-liberation faction if she hadn't told him.
Man, that girl really did look just like Ryuzu.
Rizu herself might disagree, but he couldn't imagine they were unrelated. There was a mountain of things he wanted to ask her about, not least of which was her own lineage. However, this was not the time to question her about his various misgivings.
Master Rosewall made time for you this evening. Be satisfied with that.
After seeing those wounds, I'm not gonna complain. I still feel like suspecting that was part of his scheme, though.
That is even more far-fetched. Garth came to see how Master Rosewall was doing. Does he look like the kind of man who would cooperate with Master Rosewall's plans?
You're pretty harsh with the guy who's fallen for you.
Even though he knows it is hopeless.
That last comment was the harshest of all, enough to make Subaru sympathize with the absent Garfield.
This evening, huh?
Once his sympathy ran its course, he murmured to himself about the time pledged to them for conversation. Unlike during the day, when they had been able to ask little about the circumstances surrounding the sanctuary, Roswell had set time aside so that they could speak about those matters. However, the time promised to them would come after Amelia undertook the trial.
It would seem the sun is finally setting.
Ram murmured as she turned her head outside the temple, looking up as the sky of the setting sun was repainted in the colors of the night. Night was coming. A night when people would be tested by the trial so as to set the sanctuary free. The atmosphere of the sanctuary underwent a great change after sunset. The settlement had been little more than a lonely, destitute village to begin with. It had only the minimum lighting necessary to ward off the darkness of the night. Except for the weak lighting coming from houses, there was no aid for a nighttime stroll, save the light of the stars. That was why a bonfire had been lit in the center of the settlement to illuminate the path toward the tomb, making that night an exception.
Thanks to that, we were able to hook up safe and sound. Thank goodness for fire. Right, Otto?
Look me in the eye once and try saying that one more time. Damn it all.
There in the sanctuary, in the clearing illuminated by the bonfire, Otto's face was red with anger as his outraged voice echoed. He stamped the ground with his foot, thrusting a shaking finger at Subaru as he ranted.
Do you think this is something that can be papered over with a little light conversation? You completely left me behind at the dragon carriage, unable to move away from it since morning, you understand?
Having said that, you're the one who told Garfield you would stay with the dragon carriage, right? Patlash, my fave dragon, was here too, so you shouldn't have been lonely. Well, it's a fact that I forgot you, though.
That fact sinks deeply into my empty stomach.
Subaru's brazen reply left Otto fuming amid the bonfire light breaching the darkness of night. After arriving in the sanctuary, he'd been on the same page when stabling the dragon carriage was left to him, but, having been completely forgotten over the course of furious conversation, had only just reunited with Subaru under his own power. Incidentally, it was already the dead of night, with supper at the cathedral long over.
I can't really call it an awesome tasting meal, but beggars can't be choosers.
So I am not only a chooser, but a beggar as well. I really am holding a grudge over this.
My bad, my bad. I'll apologize properly later. Right now, I've got to focus over here.
When Otto drew close, Subaru nudged his forehead back, giving a pained smile as his gaze shifted elsewhere. When Otto followed suit, he narrowed his eyes, gazing at the girl at the center of the clearing surrounded by faint points of light.
Lady Amelia and minor spirits, yes. Just how many difficult issues arose while I was unaware?
Difficult issues? Don't say it like anything and everything's all troublesome stuff we've got on our shoulders.
Am I wrong to call these issues difficult then?
They're difficult issues. Ultra difficult. On top of that, Amelia has to take over on all by herself.
Humping at the knowing look on Otto's face, Subaru proceeded to walk over to Amelia. With her eyes closed as she received the blessings of the minor spirits, she sensed his presence. Lifting her face and pursing her lips.
Get enough cheers of support from the minor spirits to satisfy you?
It's all right. But I suppose I do want one final push.
May I?
If you want to, Subaru, please.
Good luck. Don't lose. EMD.
Amelia let out a little laugh at Subaru's enthusiastic cheer, briefly adding thank you before shifting her gaze toward the tomb she was to challenge. Standing beside her, Subaru licked his lips and looked up at the ruin, which gave off a very different impression compared to during the day.
It is a tomb, so it's way creepier at night than daytime. You're all right, Amelia Tan?
I'm a little worried, but it's nothing. This is something I have to do.
Clenching a pale fist, Amelia took a deep breath and fused with plenty of vigor. At the same time, Subaru began to worry that she looked a little too worked up.
Ha ha, well, she's full of pep. Y'ad better be. Not that I'm expecting anything from ya.
Garfield and Ryuzu.
Turning toward the voice, Subaru saw two short figures walking through the entrance to the clearing. One a young-looking girl, and the other a teenage boy. Though very different people, the pair without doubt represented the sanctuary. In addition, Ram came in, following in Garfield and Ryuzu's footsteps. It seemed they were the only ones who would be watching Amelia undertake the trial.
It's a little lonely having this be the entire audience.
The humans of Erlem Village have been forbidden from venturing out at night. There is no proper lighting for them at this hour. After all, besides, we do not want to kick up an unnecessary ruckus. The elderly are very sensitive at night.
Ya sure wake up bright and early in the morning of, though.
Ram and the others replied to Subaru's musing in sequence as they lined up before the tomb in good order. Ram was a proxy for the injured Roswal. Garfield and Ryuzu represented the interests of the sanctuary. Subaru, Amelia's retainer, and the outsider Otto filled out the roster. Otto was the only one whose presence seemed tentative and not strictly necessary, but setting that aside,
I'll watch you take up the challenge in place of the people from the village. I'm sure they really wanted to cheer you on.
Thank you. I'll work hard to fulfill your expectations, those of the villagers and everyone else watching.
it was only when Amelia added the part at the very end that her gaze shifted beyond the clearing. Subaru wondered what her gesture meant, but he had no time to pursue the matter. Amelia exhaled briefly and turned back toward the tomb, walking toward the stairway at the entrance. The next moment, there was...
A light from the tomb.
It was Otto who murmured it, but his surprise was shared by everyone present. The five watched as the surface of the ruin Amelia was to challenge glowed with a faint light, seemingly welcoming the challenger, illuminating the witch's final resting place with a green, phosphorescent glow that seemed to sink into the darkness.
This is proof that the tomb recognizes Lady Amelia as being qualified to undertake the trial.
Ryuzu looked up at the phosphorescent light surrounding the tomb, putting into words the reason for the beautiful scene. Subaru and the others were speechless as they stared at it, with only Amelia unhesitant as she climbed the stairs. Then, when she reached the top of the stairs, she was greeted by the entrance to the deep, dark ruin biding its time.
I am off.
Subaru felt like he heard her speak those words in a little voice. He watched Amelia proceed into the tomb's corridor until he could no longer see her back. The entire ruin remained enveloped in the phosphorescent light. The trial had surely begun. The ruin had rent Roswal's body into tatters and had caused Subaru to faint and lose consciousness. When Amelia stepped within, worry welled in Subaru, almost as if someone were grasping his beating heart.
Do not be concerned, young Sue. The tomb has firmly welcomed Lady Amelia into it. The light you see is proof of that. You need not worry that she will bounce off like young Roz.
The image of him bouncing off is bouncing right off of me, sorry. You're just being concerned for me.
Ho ho! I do not get upset when someone apologizes. Perhaps that is why I was too soft in raising young Gar.
Subaru put on a strained smile, struck by the great contrast between her little girl appearance and the elderly smiling face she presented. As Ryuzu spoke, she glanced sidelong at Garfield, watching over the tomb some distance away. He crossed his arms, audibly clenched his fangs, and kept scraping the ground with the tips of his toes, unable to calm down.
I was just thinking,
About what?
the trial of this tomb, only those of mixed blood affected by the barrier can take it, right? Now that I think about it, Ryuzu, have you or Garfield done it already?
Logically, it is possible to merely undergo the trial. However, we cannot liberate the sanctuary. This is because of the never-ending pact that binds us residents to this place.
Another pact, huh?
Subaru's distasteful tone and the bitter look on his face made Ryuzu raise an eyebrow.
Oh? Young Su, you dislike packs?
I don't have a good impression of them. I have bad memories of trials over the last few weeks, too. The guy I hate most in this whole world talked about them a bunch.
My. What a poor impression indeed. It must cause the spirit user girl no small amount of trouble.
Spirit mages took all oaths very seriously. Ryuzu's words were proof this was a publicly known fact. As a matter of fact, pacts and oaths were among the reasons Subaru and Amelia had once split up. It went almost without saying that Subaru had internally concluded it was his own fault. All the same.
Accepting it and liking it are two different things. I'll keep putting a red line through them in my lexicon going forward.
Obstinate, aren't you? Well, a little stubbornness in a young one like you is adorable too.
It was really hard to wrap his head around the young one part. At the same time, Subaru saw a whiff of chagrin rising onto the side of Ryuzu's face. Perhaps it was nothing more than her having been robbed of the opportunity to challenge the trial for herself and having to rely on an outsider to lift the barrier. She might have quietly felt powerless on the inside. Thinking along those lines, he could understand Garfiel's irritation, too, considering the grasp of his personality Subaru had arrived at in a short time. There was no doubt he was the type who'd rather die than leave his problems for someone else to solve. From there, time proceeded to flow. Subaru did nothing and said nothing as he waited for Amelia to return. There was no visible change in Garfield. Ryuzu continued to stand beside Subaru in silence. When he shifted his gaze a little, he was surprised to see pleasant-looking conversation passing between Ram and Otto. To Subaru, who had experienced little pleasant conversation with Ram, this was an alarming development. He was about to think fruitless things, such as I'll have to get him to spill conversation tips for Ram later. But something happened first. When the change met the eyes of all others present, they instantly gasped as one. Reflexively, Subaru blinked and looked back, by which time the source of light over all that time had already been lost. In other words, the almost dazzling phosphorescent glow surrounding the tomb had been extinguished.
The light's gone? Hey, is everything all right?
The light of the tomb should not cease so long as the trial continues.
Meaning something went wrong? Amelia!
Raising his voice at the sudden disaster, Subaru raced toward the tomb without a first or second thought. Ryuzu reached toward his back, shouting with urgency in her voice.
Wait, Young Su. You are not qualified to enter the tea.
Hey, what the hell?
Ryuzu's voice trailed off in shock, leaving a bewildered Garfield to send spittle flying as he picked up where she'd left off. Ram and Otto were just as surprised. Even Subaru's breath faintly caught. The tomb lit up the instant Subaru's foot hit the steps, beginning to radiate a green phosphorescent light.
The same as Lady Amelia. Mr. Natsuki.
If I can get in, it's the answer to my prayers. Everyone stay outside. I'll call if anything happens.
Barusu!
Shrugging off the voices trying to stop him, Subaru raced up the stairs and dived into the tomb. The ruin's air was cold and dry. The corridor in which his steps echoed was enveloped by the same green phosphorescent light covering the outer walls, giving him a pretty good view of the moss and vine-covered interior. The strange sensation accompanying each and every step clawed at his chest. The scene, the location somehow seemed familiar to him. The inside of his head anguished, as if being violated by some unknown memory.
Of course I know this place. I came here before. In the date...
Deciding that his memory from that time was the culprit, he impulsively stomped on the thought in his head with a shoe as he dived deeper. The air deep in the ruin was stagnant, invading his nostrils with a dusty scent. He felt his lungs worsen with each and every breath. He shook his head as he went deeper, deeper, deeper.
A room?
When he finally reached the end of the corridor, Subaru beheld a door before his eyes that led into a small room. The grimy stone door was already open, having abandoned its duty of warding off intruders, so Subaru slipped in without resistance. He raced into the room, a cramped chamber surrounded by stone walls. Strangely, the vines and moss had not encroached upon it, and it had deteriorated only insofar as the ruin's age would suggest. In back of the not particularly large stone room was another closed door that likely led deeper still, and in front of it,
Amelia.
a silver-haired girl was spread out on the floor, seemingly having sprawled her limbs when she collapsed upon it. Unable to see her face from the entrance, Subaru desperately ran to her side. He didn't know what had happened. All he knew was that he had to pick her up and escape from the tomb as soon as First, face your past. The next instant, Subaru gasped when a voice seemed to whisper right into his ears. Strength drained from him, leaving him no time to ponder what the voice might be. His knees buckled, and Subaru's body went down like a doll, making no move to break his fall. Since he was in mid-run, he tumbled onto the floor with limbs sprawled like a snow angel, ending up right next to Amelia by pure chance.
I've fallen right beside her once before, haven't I?
He suddenly thought. Before he could recall the memory, his first memory of death, Subaru's thoughts were swallowed up by the darkness. As he always did when Subaru awoke from slumber, he felt short of breath, as if his head were breaking the surface of the water. The feeling was much like that of floating in a sea of unconsciousness, floating upward in search of the air called reality. Then, when his awakening lungs had breathed in enough of that reality, Subaru's mind awoke.
Good morn, Son.
I...
That cool, refreshing morning, his poetic rise from slumber was smashed to pieces by an incredibly destructive impact. From above, something heavy squeezed the air out of his body, forcing Subaru to let out a cry much like a frog being squished. He batted the top of the futon away as he hacked and coughed.
Hey, what's the matter? That's just my diving press to wake you up with love. Same as usual. Really gets those carelessness is your greatest enemy fires burning, huh?
Cough, cough. That's expecting way too much from a guy who's asleep. Wait, just now?
What the heck happened? He wondered, lifting his face with tearful eyes. As Subaru brought half his body out of bed, the other party pointed a finger to the ceiling right before Subaru's eyes. And then...
What is it with you? You've got the look of a guy looking at his father buck naked in the morning?
It was his father, Kenichi Natsuki, as he posed half-naked there in the morning, blessing his son's awakening with a cackling laugh. The annoying, cackling, laughing voice made Subaru appreciate that yet another normal morning had arrived. He was in his own very familiar room. There was a bookshelf stuffed with manga and light novels on the wall, and the student desk he'd been using since a young age held a variety of small tools and the fruits of various hobbies scattered over it. In the back of the room was an old television used exclusively for gaming, and before that was the very familiar sight of his half-naked father. Such was the morning scenery surrounding Subaru Natsuki atop the now unmade bed. But amid that very familiar scenery, he felt an odd stirring in his chest.
Hey, are you ignoring me? If you ignore me, I'm gonna cry. I'm your real daddy related to you by blood and no spring chicken. Do you really think I can take that? There's no way. I'll die from embarrassment.
Same goes for me then. Or rather, the press just now killed me. Now I will sleep forever.
Subaru responded appropriately to his half-naked father's statement and ducked under the futon. Faced with his son's cold demeanor, his father, Kenichi, groaned out in dissatisfaction.
Well, why? Is this your rebellious phase? Shit, I thought it'd come someday, but I never expected it'd be this morning. I should have spent less time preparing breakfast and more time preparing to speak with my own son.
You say that, but what are you trying to do with the guy's legs? Hey, wait a... Ow! Oh!
Skutai, I have decided that, today, I'll have a heart-to-heart talk with you. First, let's talk with our muscles. You just try breaking out of my figure. 4-leg lock infused with lube. Oh yeah.
With Subaru's legs bound in a lock atop the bed, Kenichi lay down facing the opposite direction as he applied pressure to the joints. Unable to resist, Subaru let out a painful cry, which Kenichi greeted with a laugh as he mocked his son.
Guaha, what's wrong? What's wrong? You work out every day, so you can grow big and strong. So aren't you ashamed of having such a hard time against one middle-aged ma? Ah, wait a second. Ow. Oh, wow.
You're a fool to pick a figure. 4-leg lock, it's weak against reversals. You're getting old, Dad. All I have to do is reverse my body and the damage flies the other way. Here's my revenge for you putting a figure 4 leg lock on. Ah, wait. You can't reverse my reversal, ow ow. Ow ow ow.
As the victim shifted that morning, painful cries arose, boisterous voices filling the Natsuki residence to the brim. Thus did the horseplay resembling a father-son dispute continue until
Put a sock in it, you two. Your mom is getting pretty hungry over here and wants to eat breakfast.
when an uneven knock and a casual voice flew into the room, the pair engaged in a war of holds came to a complete halt. Both of them teary-eyed from pain, they looked at the entryway, where a single woman stood, a middle-aged woman with a foul look in her eyes. At first sight, one might think the look grave, filled with considerable displeasure, but in truth, she wasn't the kind of person to think anything of the sort on the inside, something Subaru knew from 17 years of being acquainted with her. Subaru could derive all that from a single glance at her foul look, for the woman appearing was his mother, Nahoko Natsuki. Nahoko's words made Kenichi go, "Whoopsie." He stuck his tongue out while leaping to his feet and said,
Sorry. I lost myself scuffling with Subaru there. You could have eaten without us, you know.
Why would I? When we can eat as a family, it's better to eat with everyone together.
When Kenichi turned his attention her way, Nahoko inclined her head with a mystified look. There was neither sarcasm nor resentment in her speech. It was simply how she really felt. His wife's reply sent Kenichi nodding strongly several times over.
That's right, so very right. That's my bride. You really get it. Breakfast is much tastier when everyone's faces are gathered in one place.
The taste doesn't change. Everyone eating together means I can wash all the plates at once, though.
Ah, you were talking about the cleanup? Sorry. I guess I got overly worked up by my lonesome.
Kenichi said, a rather nice line, but Nahoko's statement bluntly shot it down. Nahoko looked curious as the blow sent her husband's shoulders sinking. Then she looked in Subaru's direction and said,
You're coming for breakfast too, Subaru. Your mom worked hard for your sake today, after all.
To this, she added a thin smile, which only those close to her understood meant she was in a very good mood indeed.
Whoa, this is amazing, Subaru. It's a super special course. It's like a green forest.
Thus spoke Kenichi, gone from half-naked to clothed, as he went down to the first floor with Subaru. Standing by his father, who wore comically eye-catching glasses, Subaru gazed at the dining table and sighed.
I'm straight up grateful. I seriously feel that way, but what's up, Mom? Why is my plate the only one with a big pile of green peas plopped on top of it?
Just as Kenichi had pointed out before, Subaru's spot on the dining table was a special course, a large heaping pile of green peas. Incidentally, Subaru really didn't like green peas. He was bad with green vegetables in general, but especially these.
Hey now, you're always saying how you hate green peas, aren't you, Subaru? It's not good to be picky about your food, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to make you eat lots and put that whole business to rest.
So you relied on a memory you'd eventually forget anyway and decided to correct my likes and dislikes. But what do you mean, this opportunity? Is today some kind of special day or something?
Hey, you're so naive. Subaru, the day that is today, no, any day, any hour is precious time that will never return again in your life. So today may not be special, but it's special in its own way.
You can, stop now.
When Kenichi wedged himself into the conversation, throwing him for a bit of a loop, Subaru sat down with resignation on his face. Then the first thing he did was push the plate, packed with green peas, away from him.
Anyway, I'll accept the feelings you felt for me on their own merit, but I'll pass on the green peas. I'm not eating these things even if it's Armageddon.
Sheesh, that kind of like and dislike stuff will be a big hindrance to life down the road. Ah, Mom, there's some tomato in my salad. I hate tomato, so give me something else to eat.
That's my father for you, damn it. The first part of what he says has nothing to do with the second.
The husband passed the tomato in his salad onto his wife, stealing the boiled egg from her salad in turn. Such trades between husband and wife were always occurring in the Natsuki residence. Glancing sidelong at that, Subaru pressed his hands together over everything on the menu except the green peas, which that morning consisted of tofu, miso soup, and honey toast heavy on the honey.
I think you're always doing this, but why the eclectic Japanese-style food?
Mom used seaweed as an ingredient in the miso soup. I like strawberry jam on my toast too.
The reply was not an answer, nor was it consistent with that day's menu. If he pointed that out, Nohoko would no doubt simply give him a mystified look. Accordingly, Subaru didn't trouble himself with pointing it out.
This miso soup. That's Mom for you. You've gotten better at this behind my back, haven't you?
You can tell? Actually, I recorded a 30-minute cooking channel video yesterday over lunchtime.
No way she watched it.
Kenichi's statement felt strongly appropriate to the moment, and Nohoko's reply felt incongruous with equal strength. Furthermore, if Nohoko's statement were dragged in line with the truth, it would likely go from her having recorded the show to her having only recorded it, most likely never to consider it again.
Setting that aside, what are you gonna do about this plate of green peas? I tried to pass it to Daddy, Daddy passed it to Mom, and Mom passed it to me, and we've been going around in circles.
But Mom hates green peas. I hate even looking at them.
And you were trying to overcome me being picky?
Don't misunderstand me. It's not just green peas that Mom hates. It's all food that's little and round like that. It feels icky to put them in my mouth.
That's not a misunderstanding. Then, if anything, it just sounds even fishier than before.
Deflated by his mother's impactful statement, Subaru grudgingly pushed the plate of green peas Kenichi's way.
Well, it's the husband's place to take responsibility for the wife, so I'll leave it to Daddy to reap the fruits of defeat.
Hey, don't make me feel all lonely here, Subaru. We're family getting along like few do these days, right? In other words, if Mom hates it, Daddy hates it too.
Man, I really feel for this forest of green. Nobody's happy with it.
In the end, Kenichi made a face like a mischievous brat as he said, "Guess we'll have to plop 'em into Pilaf until they're all gone." Heh heh. And thus, how to dispose of them was settled. No longer having to solo the green peas, Subaru readily promised to cooperate in their disposal. For her part, Nohoko declared, "I hate even looking at them," completely rejecting them in every way. In the end, it became a competition between the two men to dispose of the green peas, and the family breakfast finally came to an end.
It was a feast.
Oh, it was nothing special. Okay, let's wash all the dinnerware in the sink. Then it's a race to school to help with digestion. Subaru.
I keep telling you, give it up with this cliche rushing me off to school routine. I'm gonna sleep till noon.
Zero Starting Life in Another World by Tapi Nagatsuki, casted six-tale novel. Please subscribe to our channel. The offer with a glint of his teeth, leaving Subaru to listlessly shake his head. Then, as he watched both parents head off, Subaru scratched his head as he went toward his bedroom. Then his feet stopped.
Glyn.
A throbbing pain ran across his temples, making Subaru strongly rub his head and eyes. The light flashing on the backs of his eyelids made him blink, and he felt like he could hear something hot smoldering inside his chest. Something was off. Something about that morning was odd.
Subaru?
From the back of his head, the halted Subaru felt the gazes of his parents. Subaru knew just what emotions were infused into his father's gaze, his mother's gaze, the gazes of both his parents. He didn't turn around. He silenced his head, practically fleeing. No, literally fleeing to his own room.
What? Why am I getting these weird feelings like this?
Touching a hand to his own breast, Subaru sensed his rapid heartbeats and even fear. Practically crumbling, he knelt on top of the futon, focusing his restless mind on the clock mounted on the wall. The time was 8 a.m., school started at 8:30, and it was a 20-minute jog from home. If he changed clothes, he could just make it without being late. But Subaru made no sign of changing clothes as he stared at the movement of the clock from atop the futon. Gradually, the second hand notched forward and the minute hand moved to 10, crossing the deadline. From then on, he would not make it in time for school to begin. However, he might struggle. That was absolute.
So it can't be helped. Yeah, it can't be helped.
Perhaps, if there'd been just a little more time until he could harden his resolve, he might have made it to school. But reality had imposed its time limit on Subaru to an exceptional extent. He'd gone beyond it. Therefore, no more would the choice press upon him that day.
And yet, usually, this would calm me down, wouldn't it? What gives?
His breath was ragged, his heart rate wouldn't settle, and Subaru had desperately tried to suppress the shaking of his body. This was the time for his daily ritual of fear to come to a close. Even though he knew that the same fear would come every day at the same hour, that days had exceeded all bounds. That morning, no one would censure Subaru any longer. No one would hurry him or back him into a corner. Whether to go to school, the time that tiny question would cause such powerful pain to Subaru had come to an end. It had been several months since he had rejected school and become a delinquent. Though this had given root to a powerful sense of inferiority and self-revulsion, he became relieved every time he confirmed that the time to go to school had passed. This was something Subaru had repeated many times over. Thus, the palpable sense of relief should have been well ingrained in Subaru's flesh.
And yet, what is it today of all days?
The sense of guilt and self-hatred, the clinging sense of unpleasantness, they just wouldn't vanish. He didn't know where the sense of nervousness plucking at his chest was coming from. Without understanding how to set his breathing straight, Subaru agonized on top of the futon, smeared in disagreeable sweat. Now that he thought back, something had been off from the moment he'd awoken that morning. His father, Kenichi, hatching schemes like that to wake Subaru up was a daily fact of life. Once Subaru stopped going to school, becoming a good-for-nothing in name and fact, his father's approach toward him hadn't changed from before. And yet the physical contact, the conversing the holds from his father, now hurt for a different reason. Even if his mother, Nahoko, had all kinds of harebrained ideas that strayed from the mark, with those that misfired, like the one that morning, far more common than those that did not. She'd always put Subaru first. Always. For 17 years. Even so, his mother's gaze that morning had instilled a sense of loneliness and thoughts of self-reproach well beyond the norm. Everything was the same as usual, not a thing out of place. And yet, he'd sensed something off about his parents and about himself.
The heck? What the heck? What happened? Yesterday wasn't anything speck. Ugh!
When he thought back to the day before in search of the cause of that morning's change in tone, fireworks scattered inside his head. The pain interrupted his thought process, feeling strangely as if it was preventing Subaru's attempt to touch on his own memory. To prove whether it was so, Subaru would have to challenge the sea of his memory once more. And this he did not do. There was no special reason for the odd pain that morning. That day, his feelings of guilt had simply decided to assert themselves as pain. Probably he had been unable to look either of his parents straight in the eye because…
Subaru, can I come in for just a bit?
A voice came through the door, but the door opened before he could reply. When he let out a heavy breath and turned his head toward it, Kenichi was moonwalking his way into his own son's room. Subaru spontaneously smacked his forehead.
Coming in before I answer kind of defeats the point of asking me, doesn't it?
Hey, now, with the hard bonds tying me and you, father and son together, that's not really necessary. It kind of is. Sorry, I wasn't considering that you're in puberty. I'll come again after you've taken care of things.
Don't go back to form and lob weirdly realistic conclusions out like that. I wasn't even doing anything.
When a crack was evident in the chain between father and son, he made a show of consideration. When Subaru spoke with a ragged voice, Kenichi went, "Really?" with a suspicious air and entered the room once more. Then he sat on the futon and crossed his arms in Subaru's direction.
Well, it's fine. We'll leave what just happened as a secret shared by the two of us alone.
There's nothing that needs to be a secret. Just be honest, sheesh. All you're doing is assaulting me before I get back to sleep again.
I get it. I get it. So, then, let's get to the point. Actually, Subaru, I took time off from work today. Surprised?
Yeah, I figured that. Daddy's not at the house on a Monday morning very often. And
Don't be hasty jumping to conclusions. A father-son conversation is like boxing. The jab comes first.
Kenichi's laid-back smile and demeanor made Subaru feel like he was just drawing out the conversation. He was dancing around the main issue, using words and gestures to make light of things, and giving himself and his opponent time to harden their resolve. This was a kind of habit in interpersonal relations, Subaru knew well. It was not simply because the apple did not fall far from the tree. There was a separate reason, one steeped in incorrigible idiocy.
oh,
The instant he embraced that sentiment, a sharp pain ran through Subaru's head once more. He began to vaguely suspect just what was causing the pain.
and now that you've landed the jab, what's Daddy's right-handed punch? Your conversation topic gonna be?
Yes, let's see. Subaru, do you have a girl you like?
What is this? Middle school?
Oh, that overreaction is like making a confession, don't you know?
What gives with you saying that with that smug look on your face? Exasperated sighs of lament don't mean anything, you know.
He'd meant to paper over the sentiment, but that blow had been an unexpected one. But, as a matter of fact, the assertion was off the mark, because Subaru didn't have any interest in such things at that time. He had neither the interest nor belief that he ought to have one.
Kay? Well, aren't you boring? I laid it all out when you were little, didn't I? Girls have a weakness for promises that happened years ago, and situations like that, so go make some and set up some flags. Damn it!
If I sincerely took that as truth, I'd have every girl in town pointing me out as a dishonest bastard. I already have too many sins to deal with. You trying to drive me down into a living hell?
If only you'd inherited my gentle mask. You've got mom's I don't give a damn look, plus daddy's short legs and bad jokes. Your status points are pretty low, huh?
I've been saying that since I had an umbilical cord.
The tension dropped between father and son as they bantered about their hardwired genetic situations. As the diversion ran its course, Subaru returned to So once more and asked,
What was the issue at hand, anyway? After this, I have an important duty to fulfill, sleeping 2 to 3 more hours. So if what you want draws a total B, then talk to Mom downstairs, okay?
Don't brush me off all natural like that. Besides, this talk would just fly over mom's head. My wife and your mom is the worst woman at guessing in the whole world. That's why I can't let her out of my sight, but
the natural way he tossed out fond phrases bored Subaru, his adolescent son, to tears. When Subaru hung his head, Kenichi went, then twisted his neck a bit and smiled mischievously as he said,
well, it happens to be nice weather out. How about we dress up and have a little father-son talk outside?
Oh, Ken, not often I see you in the morning. They finally fired you, huh?
Don't be stupid. Nothing's getting done in that place without me. Felt bad to work so much that I'm stealing everyone else's job, so I've got to lay off once in a while.
Kenichi lobbed his insult with a raise of his middle finger, smiling toward the owner of a nearby bakery as he passed on his bicycle. He proceeded to toss warm words the store owner's way as the latter vanished around a bend, adding afterward,
Sheesh, everyone talks like I got fired, just 'cause they see me taking a day off. Is it so bad I'm nurturing a loving family here? And if I was fired, I'd get a new job before I got busted.
As a person you're nurturing, I'm praying you don't toss any heart-stopping surprises like that on me.
Hands thrust into his tracksuit pockets, Subaru watched the conversation with the baker from a distance, with sinking shoulders.
Hey, it's bad enough in your own darned room, but there you are, making that suspicious face when I've dragged you out and the sun's shining this bright on a nice crisp morning like this. You might get stopped by a cop like that.
If I got stopped by a cop, it'd be because Daddy dragged me out at a time like this. I said I didn't wanna, but you twisted my arm anyway.
What are you saying? That foot dragging was just going through the motions. You really love everything about Daddy, don't ya, Subaru? Relax, I love you too. Next after Mom, that is.
Their stroll recommenced, and Kenichi's feelings didn't seem all that hurt as he gave Subaru a slap on his back. Subaru grimaced at the force of it, but that moment, his thoughts were stolen by an even greater ache in his breast. After all, simply walking close to his father instilled so much pain. He felt like it would crush his chest.
Don't be all guarded like that. It's not like I'm gonna talk about anything scary. It's an actual, legit father-son talk.
Legit father-son talk, kid, eh?
Yep, legit father-son talk. Incidentally, Subaru, which would you rather have, a little brother or a little sister?
Being asked that at 17 is nothing but scary.
He'd lost count of the unexpected blows, but this one left Subaru aghast, voice coarsened. Seeing his son like that, Kenichi went, I'm kidding, showing off his teeth with a smile.
Well, Mom and I are certainly still on lovey-dovey terms, but at our age, we really don't want to see more than one of you, so be happy. You're monopolizing my and Mom's love.
Right. Happy. You really are joking, right?
That sounds like the lead-up to new. Do you hate me that much? And that kind of stuff, huh?
When the possibility it wasn't merely a joke finally surfaced, Subaru wordlessly reflected on that possibility. Taking in the insecure, objecting gaze, Kenichi laughed K, as he nodded. Subaru and his father were walking on a footpath a short distance from home? Subaru lived in a place with a mildly famous riverside doubling as a spring tourist spot, with cherry trees growing along the embankment. It was currently the wrong season for cherry blossoms, so the embankment was in full leaf instead. Subaru glanced at the trees as he walked with his father around town.
Ken, what are you doing here in the morning? It's a late hour for starting pachinko, don't you know? Oh my, Kenichi. By any chance, were you seduced by the aroma of curry in the daytime? Oh wow, you're here, Ken. Now that's really funny. Isn't this bad for you? It's funny, though.
The bright, sunny, average day made the time fly as father and son walked around town that morning with numerous voices tossed their way. No, the voices were not being tossed their way. They were limited to the father, Kenichi, alone. Regardless of whether male or female, young or old, there seemed no limit to the people who knew Kenichi's face. That went for the store owner in the shopping district, the housewife taking out the garbage, the senior high school girl with the ganguro look that was rarely seen nowadays, etc., etc.
Kenny, it's been a while. You still hanging out with Ikeda,
That Ikeda guy? He won big at horse racing and used the money to retire and vanish 10 years ago. He still sends New Year's cards, summer greeting cards, winter greeting cards, Christmas cards, and cards on his mom and pop's birthdays, though.
I wouldn't call someone in touch that much vanished.
When Subaru inadvertently interrupted with a quip, he quickly covered his mouth. Overhearing his murmur, Kenichi and the solidly built old man he was speaking to looked over. The other man was wearing green overalls and a tag with the name of the riverside on it, so he seemed like a caretaker of some sort. The old man spurring the conversation must have gone way back with Kenichi, his eyes going round as he looked at Subaru.
Kenny, it's not often you bring someone along with you. Could that child be?
Yeah. This is my son. Nah, I should correct that. My beloved son.
Oh, I knew it. Somehow, he seemed like the spitting image of you when you were, maybe not so much. He takes after his mother, perhaps?
Haha. I get that a lot, especially about the look of my eyes.
Amid the very average construction of his face, he'd inherited Nihoko's extremely characteristic, three whites, eyes look. In terms of outward appearance, about the only thing Subaru had inherited from Kenichi was the somewhat limited length of his legs. When Subaru gave that non-committal reply, the old man eagerly nodded.
I am surprised, though, that Kenny got old enough to have a boy this big. Guess I'm getting old, too. If Ikeda was drowning, I don't have any strength in my body left to go swim and save him.
Well, I don't think even that Ikeda guy is enough of a kid to go play in the river and drown.
I certainly hope not. Ikeda and your father just won't settle down like they should at their ages. Did you know they both used to be brats who walked around town kicking up all kinds of ruckus?
Well, kinda.
Subaru's reply was on the awkward side. Receiving this, the old man nodded his eyes with a somewhat suspicious look. However, the next moment, the creases of his brow deepened further.
Come to think of it, today's Monday, isn't it? What are you doing with your father at this hour?
The question he did not want asked, the words he did not want to hear, made Subaru's heart strongly jump. Next came the sharp stabbing pain, like that which had visited him in his own bedroom. Spontaneously, Subaru clutched his painful head and closed his eyes, ringing out, "I'm sorry," as he turned his back upon the old man.
Ah, hey, Subaru. Sorry, Pops. I'll come again when we can take our time.
All right. It seems I shouldn't have said that. Apologize to the lad for me, would you?
The conversation exchanged behind him did not enter his ears. At any rate, Subaru tried to run from the pain threatening to crack his skull, seeking a place where he could get the pounding heartbeats in his chest to calm down, fleeing from the embankment with rapid steps. "It's nothing you need to apologize for, and the rest is his problem. While he fled, he never heard Kenichi utter those words behind his back."
Here, a cold, tasty cola, packed with love. If you give it a nice, good shake, it's even tastier. Well, I'd like to say that, but this doesn't seem to be the time.
No one has time to pack anything with love on the way back from the vending machine.
Accepting it, Subaru felt the coolness of the can on his palm as he put his fingers on the pull tab. Then, after a moment's thought, he pointed the can's lid toward no one in particular before putting strength into his fingers. The instant he opened the lid, the contents spewed out with incredible force, reducing its contents by about a third. And, witnessing this,
Chew.
Don't click your tongue. I've seen this movie before. My hand's all sticky now.
shaking off his cola-bathed hand, Subaru clicked his own tongue at Kenichi's childish prank. Then he put the lightened can to his lips, swallowing down and healing his parched throat in one sitting. He savored the carbonic acid bouncing down his throat, wishing it would wash away even the discomfort welling in his chest.
So, you've calmed down?
A little.
Replying with a sober look, Subaru sank his weight into the bench upon which his butt rested. As his son proceeded to heave a deep sigh, Kenichi, standing right in front of him, opened his can of cola and brought it to his own lips. After fleeing from the footpath, father and son had ended up at a desolate public park for children. Naturally, it being morning on an ordinary weekday, there was no sign of anyone in the park, which liberated Subaru from the strange feeling of being backed into a corner. Even then, the headache was asserting itself, but it had abated to the point that he could converse. He wanted to change the subject, and soon.
Incidentally, it took you a bit of time just to go to the vending machine and back. Did something happen?
Nothing big. I just met a high school girl skipping class on my way to the machine. I lectured her about going to school, treated her to juice, traded email addresses, and sent her on her way.
There's no way I'm believing you got to trading email addresses in that short a time.
He had no words for the notion his father had gotten an email address from a high school girl who was probably just going to the ladies' room for a few.
Is that so? It doesn't take that much for a girl to give out her email, at least. My cell phone's address book has almost 3 whole pages full of high school girls' addresses I've picked up on the way.
Even if I went to a government office or something, I'd probably only get 2. Daddy, you're not going to get caught for some weird offense, are you?
Moron, I'm not interested in doing anything indecent with high school girls. They're children. The destination for my love was set long ago. My passions are for my family alone.
Categorizing it like that makes it sound like I'm included. You know?
Well, I do love you. Like a puppy.
Like hell you do. Which one's the moron here?
Kenichi responded to Subaru's angry voice with a vulgar, cackling laugh. That laughing voice left no refined echo upon the ear, and yet for some reason, people didn't find it unpleasant at all. All Kenichi's actions were like that. Everything he did was over the top, deprived of common sense, excessively theatrical, completely the sort of thing other people shunned you for, but for some reason, everyone took it in a really friendly way. It was just that, merely by their going outside for a walk, the decisive difference between Subaru and his father was driven home to a distinctly painful extent. ReZero Starting Life in Another World by Tappy Nagatsuki, casted six-tale novel. Please subscribe to our channel.
I think Dad and Mom are both gonna worry about me a lot. You've worried enough about me where you can see me, and now I'll be somewhere you can't. But I'll be thinking of you no matter where I am, and I'll never forget about either of you.
Subaru.
I'll never think I don't want to be Mom and Dad's child ever again, and I'll never hate myself again. I know those words don't really let you send me off with peace of mind, but
Subaru.
Even Subaru no longer understood what he was saying when Nahoko called out to him from very close. When he looked up, his mother was standing right before his eyes. And then,
Subaru, it's all right.
what do I mean? All right.
I know exactly what you're trying to say, Subaru, so you don't need to try so hard to find the words.
You know, but how?
Because I'm your mother, Subaru.
There was not a single shred of logic behind the statement, so why did it feel irrefutable? The backs of his eyes grew hot. He'd sensed the same thing only a few hours before. Just how many times would Subaru need to bawl like a little child? How many tears had to flow before he could regain an unshakable heart of steel? I'm like a little kid here, so lame.
If it's lame to cry when you need it, then that makes every single baby born in the world lame as well.
That's not what I mean.
Yes, I told you, I get it. From Mom and Dad's point of view, you'll be our child no matter what your age. Subaru, when you want to cry, go ahead and cry.
the world began to blur. Tears came running out. Subaru hid his face behind the sleeve he used to rub it so his mother wouldn't see it. Out of respect for Subaru's stubbornness, Nahoko didn't peer any closer. All she did was slowly stroke the short hair on Subaru's head. As she stroked him, Subaru straightened his back.
Sorry, Mom. In the end, I can't do a damn thing for either of you.
You know, I didn't give birth to you because I wanted something from you. I gave birth to you because I wanted to give. Subaru, your mother gave birth to you because she wanted to give you love.
How much of this, the very definition of love, Subaru had already received from her was simply incalculable.
If you really want to do something for Mom, take those feelings and give them to someone else. And if you happen to give that love to a girl you like, Subaru, isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Of course it is. What your mother says is never wrong.
With a satisfied smile, Nahoko toyed with Subaru's forelocks with her fingers. The feeling of those fingers tickled Subaru, making him smile back at her with his tear-marred face.
Ah, man, I'm super pathetic. Just crying and crying.
It's fine to cry. Subaru, you cried so much when you were born. At first, everyone cries in an ugly way. A lot of things happen, and you cry in lots of places. But if, after crying a lot, you end with a smile, everything's all right. What's important is not where you start, or what happens midway, but how it ends.
So if the results are good, everything's okay then.
You're taking that the wrong way. Consider this homework from your mother.
An opportunity to revise his answer would likely never come. In the name of homework, she had offered him words of farewell. Accepting them as such, Subaru took them to heart. Surely the day would come when the answer would emerge, and he would understand it, as if by natural design. It was neither a very manly nor a very valiant farewell scene. Neither father nor mother, faced with a son who'd holed up for so long before saying goodbye while unable to even say where he was going, had spoken a word of resentment. Instead, they were able to send him off with smiling faces. For him, this place and his parents, who were both too good for him, they were things he loved.
Well, I'm heading off.
Go ahead.
Turning his head back at the end, he forced his cheeks to move and make a smile, leaving that awkward, smiling face behind for his mother. Subaru turned his back to her and walked forward. The commute to school would be anticlimactic. After the fork, all he had to do was go straight down the road, then up a hill, and then the school campus would come into Vi.
That's right. Subaru. I forgot.
Then, just when he was all hyped up to get going, a scatterbrained voice called out to him from behind. Subaru, worried about what the very, very end might bring, turned to see his mother raise a hand as she said, "Wait, Kent."
Come back soon.
Then, with a little wave of her hand, his mother spoke those words with a pleasant smile. The last night before he had been summoned to another world, before heading out to the convenience store, his mother had surely seen Subaru off the exact same way. But at the time, Subaru, perhaps being in a sour mood, had said nothing, simply opening the door. And this was the last chance for him to wipe away his regrets from that day. His mom's advanced level conversation piece was, no matter how many detours you may take, you will always arrive at the right answer in the end. The instant he remembered that, a genuine smile, not a forced one, broke out as he called out to her.
Be back soon.
At the school campus, he didn't see a single student, or teacher, or anyone. When he headed from the entrance to the footlocker, he opened the ill-fitting door that had remained closed for a while. He switched from outdoor shoes to indoor shoes, then walked into the linoleum-floored corridor. Third year, 6th class, seat 22. That was Subaru Natsuki's spot in school. The classroom for third-year high school students, the senior class of the school, was on the first floor. His own footsteps echoed down the silent corridor as Subaru wasted no time heading to his own classroom. Then he stood in front of the door and took a deep breath. Putting his hand on the door, he slid it sideways, opening it wide in one go. That instant, Subaru, blatantly arriving so very late, had reproachful stares converge on him from all over the classroom.
I must say, you came far sooner than I expected.
No such thing happened. When he surveyed his classroom after so long, the seats, including Subaru's own in the back row and against the window, were empty everywhere he looked, save a single seat filled in the very center. Then the individual sitting in that seat turned toward Subaru, seat and all.
Welcome. Tell me, what did you gain from the time you spent facing your own past?
Stroking her own white hair, such was the question that the Witch of Greed posed to him, her eyes filled with inquisitiveness. The white-haired girl remained seated in her chair in the middle of the classroom as she gave a wry, charming smile. Receiving her gaze upon him, Subaru leaned his upper body into the corridor, checking until he reconfirmed there was no one else around. Then, he turned back toward the classroom once more, scratching his head.
First, there's something I want to tell you.
You may speak it. I am very interested in whatever you might be thinking.
That school uniform really looks good on you.
The witch's eyes had an inquisitive glint as Subaru pointed and conveyed his impression. For a moment, the witch blinked at that impression, and then she gave a burst of irrepressible laughter.
Ha ha! Thank you. That makes it well worth rummaging through your memories to reproduce it. These clothes are seared into your memories particularly strongly. Perhaps you are rather fond of them?
The girl, Echidna, rose from her seat, grasping the hem of her skirt as she twirled around on the spot. The sight of her white hair swaying down her back made her look like nothing more than an attractive teenage girl. She wore a gray skirt and a navy blue blazer. The red ribbon adorning her breasts marked her as a student of the same grade as Subaru, providing a vivid contrast to the white shirt underneath.
It's just that I like longer skirts more than short, personally. Long skirts twirl around for longer, so it tugs at your thoughts even stronger that way.
I see. Well then, I must ensure that my skirt twirls for longer the next time.
Not that there's going to be a next time. Also, it's not as if I really like everyone wearing that outfit. Here, it's just what you have to wear. It's as obligatory as a knight's dress uniform.
Echidna giggled at him, looking like she only took his explanation half seriously. Humping through his nose at her, Subaru sat down in the empty chair in front of Echidna, turning to face her.
I really thought you would be more surprised.
If you meant to hide it, you should have put more effort into the background. This goes for the commute to school too, but there isn't a single adult or child inside the whole school, and that's impossible.
Even if he'd reasoned it was late afternoon of a normal day, the world simply felt too bereft of human presence. It was as if the world had been stripped of everything that was not useful information from Subaru's perspective.
This world's way too convenient from my point of view. What's with this place? I was just entering the place called your tomb, and then.
You entered my tomb, possessing the qualifications to do so. Therefore, the trial began. That is all. Did you not hear the words? First, face your past.
Echidna, replying to confirm Subaru's impressions, crossed her hands behind her back as she tilted her head. The beautiful girl's hair swayed with the wind, a gentle, cool breeze blowing into the classroom as the school uniform on her casually melted away. Sensing that each of her nonchalant gestures was a trap she had laid around his heart, Subaru consciously averted his gaze from her.
It's gradually coming back to me. What did you do to the memory of when we first met? I completely forgot about you until the moment this trial was underway.
I told you, did I not? You are forbidden to speak of having met me at my little tea party to anyone else. It was faster and more reliable to affect your memory than trust in the tightness of your lips. Ah, I would like you to relax. I did not play around with any other memories. I would never do such a banal thing.
What basis do I have to believe what you just said?
Perhaps your understanding of a witch's true nature? I am the witch of greed, lust for knowledge incarnate.
Echidna crossed her arms as if embracing her own elbows, leaving Subaru unable to read what rested within her black eyes. Whether to trust the witch felt like a stupid question that did not require any elaborate thought. He'd already undergone terrible ordeals at the hands of the Witch of Jealousy and the cult that worshipped her. The same went for Echidna.
But first I want to set you straight about something. The fact is, you're the one who gave me the qualification for the trial.
Set me straight, you say. Somehow, that sets my heart just slightly aflutter. How strange. I feel slightly elated that you would speak to me in such a manner.
All I did was to upgrade you from an unpalatable thing to a maybe unpalatable thing.
When Echidna's smile deepened, Subaru responded by tossing words her way that seemed intended to fend her off. Che went to Echidna, tapering her lips as her almond-shaped eyes gently narrowed.
Everyone harbors regrets from their past. Living day to day makes it impossible to exist without regret. Regret is a function built into all people.
Don't put it pessimistically like that. That regret thingy turns into reflection. Reflecting on yesterday lets you scrape by today. Reflecting on today lets you bust through tomorrow. That's a function built into people too, isn't it?
Precisely.
She drew close to the surprised Subaru, her face approaching so close that they could share breaths, opening her mouth as if to press him for more.
Such a simple observation engenders what is, in the end, a minor difference. But which answer one chooses greatly affects whether one views the past optimistically or pessimistically. Most view the past pessimistically, repudiating the path that has led them to the present, and in that repudiation they avert their eyes, never closing the lid upon what has happened.
Your face is close.
Such a thing cannot be helped, for the you of yesterday was infinitely ignorant compared to the you of today. The you of now is at an absolute deficiency of knowledge compared to the you of tomorrow. In the sum amount of knowledge and in the total number of memories, the past is inferior to the present, and the present is inferior to the future. That is a fact.
Paying the overwhelmed Subaru no heed, Echidna spoke exceedingly passionately, punctuating her speech by strongly slamming both hands onto the desk.
Accordingly, when people face the past, they sift through hesitation, bewilderment, anguish, and sorrow, all in search for an answer. I shall affirm whatever answer they arrive at As a result, I shall find no fault in any answer, for it is proof that you have faced your past, absorbing it and using it as your cornerstone as you overcome it.
So that's the objective of this trial? Huh, mission accomplished, I guess?
Facing your own past can mean accepting or rejecting it. What is important is arriving at an answer. One cannot overcome the trial with fear, anger, or cowering. However, I extol those who have either accepted their past or made a clean break with it. For that, I shall offer as many opportunities as one might desire. That is this trial.
When Subaru took this as meaning he'd passed, Echidna made that powerful declaration, raising her clenched fist. Immediately afterward, Echidna audibly gasped as she came back to her senses, her cheeks reddening as she cleared her throat and said,
I became a trifle too excited. I am sorry for the unsightly display.
I don't really mind. I did get to smell your breath a lot, but it smelled like citrus fruit. More importantly, from what you're saying, I passed the conditions for clearing the trial, right?
I believe you have displayed sufficient results for me to declare that this portion is finished.
Echidna touched a hand to her chest, her face full of satisfaction, like one savoring the aroma of luxuriant black tea.
In regards to your trauma and your lingering feelings of guilt toward your past, you have found an answer to both. This I wish to praise with thunderous applause.
One portion, wait! You saw me bawling my eyes out, didn't you?
So, Sowaby, before I knew it, even my eyes were moist.
Shadap! Don't tell a soul, it's embarrassing!
Subaru couldn't keep his cool at her being a peeping Tom in regards to his farewell with his parents. Both longing and regret bared. Her inquisitiveness that instant was a slight against Subaru's family.
But what a pity! It seems you already had your answer for facing your painful past.
Ah!
I welcome any answer. But it is my belief that an answer means more when one must take an excessive time to arrive at it. I was hoping that you would arrive at your answer as a result of racking your brain, but it would seem the trial unfortunately came too late for you to amuse me to the fullest. More's the pity.
Echidna made a morose sigh. Nodding his brows at her words, Subaru slowly realized it for himself. If Echidna's desired outcome for the trial was for Subaru to face his past trauma in the form of both his parents, overcoming that past after much agony, he could only give his condolences.
A girl told me, a totally helpless no-good guy, that I'm her hero. That's why I've already accepted how much I come up short. I don't need to face my past now to teach me that.
So you resigned yourself to it in a different manner. It is not at all amusing that this has gone contrary to my will. Should you meet that girl on the outside, I would like you to convey that a witch bears a grudge against her.
Subaru's breath caught at the way she so casually stated that extremely frightening complaint. He knew he was at the limit of his ability to avert his eyes from comprehension he did not wish to accept. Echidna's presence, the world without people, and her saying she was reproducing a school uniform from his memories, even an idiot would realize that.
Not that I even need to ask. This world, it really is.
Yes, that's right. This is a fictitious world reproduced using completely faithful reliance upon your memories. Therefore, naturally, your real parents remain with no knowledge of where you are and what you are doing, and are no doubt worried about their son, vanished without a trace.
Really faithful in every way, though. They talked about a whole bunch of things I didn't know about.
Did you truly not know these things? Perhaps you saw a letter sent by an acquaintance of your parents once. Did you not meet an old man who knew your father when he was young? Did you truly not suspect even once that this image of your father was at odds with what you believed?
When Subaru seemed to cling to her, Echidna indulged him, pounding home point after point.
You thought they didn't know, but in your heart, did you really want to conceal it? Can you truly say you didn't want a fictional father and an idealized mother to know all along, out of the self-serving desire to be loved in spite of them knowing?
With Subaru cowed into silence, Echidna drew her face close to his the tenor of her speech gradually diminishing to a whisper as it gained an ever more suspicious-sounding ring. Then, when she was close enough to breathe on him, she said,
That is a little too idealistic. A little too convenient. Do you not think so?
Echidna gracefully smiled as those soft, seemingly adoring words dug deep into Subaru's heart. At odds with the age-appropriate appearance she had displayed to that moment, this was the malevolent smile of a witch. In the face of that captivating smile, infected with a witch's seductiveness, Subaru closed his eyes and,
Don't mock my parents out of some half-baked resentment, Echidna.
What?
I gave my entire answer to them. Both my mom and my dad accepted it. I told them everything I hadn't said, and they said everything I wanted them to say. Hang in there, come back soon.
Subaru stood up, put his hands on the desk, and put his forehead to Echidna's. Subaru watched the witch's black eyes blink in surprise as he pounded his own chest.
Those voices, those smiling faces, every last bit was what my imagination poured into them. They're not vases for you to pour your half-baked ideas into. Don't look down on them. Those are my parents. I told them everything I had to say. I'm not going to be led astray by words from someone like you.
Turning her blad-like words back upon her, Subaru snorted and set his hips down on the chair once more. His brusque crossing of his legs, rough nasal breathing, and hard glare made the witch look taken aback as she exhaled.
Goodness. To not leave any room for doubts in the answer you have given. You truly know how to make a little witch cry.
Sucks to be you. I really love Mom and Daddy.
He puffed out his chest as he asserted it, though he couldn't quantify just how long it had taken before he could do so. Echidna greeted Subaru's stance with a resigned shake of her head.
In a true sense, this trial is over. I hope for great things for the next question.
Yeah, next question? The hell? The trial isn't just one thing?
My, did I not tell you when you first entered the tomb? First, face your past.
Stop talking like a Japanese language teacher. And that deceptive face really annoys me.
Subaru was shocked at the notification that it would be a longer fight as Echidna leaned an elbow against the desk, forming a mischievous smile.
The condition for liberating the sanctuary is to pass the tomb's trial. 3 parts in total. I am pleased I was finally able to speak to you about this. My chest is aflutter that I have surprised you to quite this extent.
Yeah, I've got a real lively look on my face because you didn't tell me about this back at the tea party. Damn it!
She'd no doubt been full of frustration concerning the uncooperative visitor arriving for tea with far too little information. Unlike that previous time, he had more he wanted to ask her about, but
Either way, you're not going to hand out cheat sheets on the contents of the trials or how to answer, are you?
Of course not. Stealing my fun from me after my death would simply be far too cruel.
Don't talk about this like some geezer's fun, sheesh.
wincing from the witchy reply, Subaru slowly rose from his seat. There was no longer anything he wished to speak to Echidna about, nor was there any reason to stay in that place, that fictional world, for long, save for lingering attachment. He'd said his farewells to the regrets in his heart. That was enough.
Hey, Echidna.
What is it? Ah, a grudge to vent. Or perhaps you wish to punch me once? Certainly, you have the right to do that much. I know my amusement comes at your expense, but I am a woman. At least avoid the fuss.
Thank you.
Echidna's face froze when she heard those words. The sight of Echidna in shock, eyes wide open and taken aback, felt a little creepy to Subaru as he spoke.
Even if it wasn't real, even if I didn't really say those things to the two of them, thanks to you, I was able to say out loud what I wanted to tell them. To put it bluntly, even if it's the result of your shitty curiosity, I was able to say goodbye to them. If nothing else, I'm grateful for that. So thank you.
You are an incredibly interesting person. One I am no longer able to understand, to a degree that is frightening.
Echidna's reply contained neither jest nor falsehood. Rather, it felt as if she was speaking from the heart for the very first time. After hearing her reply, Subaru shrugged, smiling like a mischievous boy.
I'm honored to have frightened a witch, so how do I get out of this world?
This world has served its purpose. It has already begun to disappear. Nothing save this building still holds its proper shape. Exit the building, and you should find yourself in the tomb where you started.
Well, that's pretty convenient.
When Echidna's answer prodded him to look out the window, the distant sky was indeed warped like some kind of mirage. Having fulfilled its duty, the false world was vanishing back into a distant dream. With it went the father who had given Subaru a push forward and the mother who had sent him off.
They already taught me the important stuff, though.
The emotions filling his chest and the hot sensations in the backs of his eyes made Subaru rub his eyes once with his sleeve. Then he lifted his face and there was room for tears no more. Subaru turned his back to the witch and faced the classroom's exit to bring that world to an end and…
That's right, one more thing. It seems like you want me to challenge this trial again going forward, but I can't do it.
Meaning what?
Echidna knitted her refined eyebrows as Subaru paused on the verge of leaving the room, turning only his head back toward her. Subaru lifted a finger toward her, wagging it left and right as he spoke.
It's not my job to clear the trial and liberate the sanctuary. This is a commemorative exam, just because I happen to have an exam ticket on me. It'll be a different kid who'll fulfill your expectations.
He remembered Amelia, who had challenged the tomb and had surely undergone the same trial. It was her duty to liberate the sanctuary. Subaru's challenge had been completely unplanned. He couldn't raise Echidna's hopes. So he said that last thing, waving his hand toward the witch he was probably seeing for the last time.
Will that truly be the case, I wonder?
Subaru Natsuki never noticed Echidna's deeply suggestive whisper as he was enveloped in white light. Then he left the world of the trial. The instant he awoke, the first thing Subaru felt was the bitter taste of sand and dust inside his mouth.
Blarg! P2! Pew! Some weird rocks in my mouth, blah.
Feeling drool and something else shaped like a rock on the tip of his tongue, Subaru retched as he instantly sprang up. When he surveyed the area around his dirty body, he saw an empty room shrouded in thin darkness. The cold, chilly air and musty, acrid scent, they reminded him that he was in the tomb.
That's right, I completed it.
Now that Subaru was awake, his mind finally caught up as he recalled all that had happened since he collapsed. He'd been pulled into the trial, had been reunited with his parents, spoke with them, then returned to reality. There didn't seem to be any gaps in his memory from start to finish. He remembered it all.
Not like I can forget bawling my eyes out like that. I'm glad.
Leaving his father and mother was a sad, nostalgic memory, but also the ritual that had hardened his resolve. Relieved he had not forgotten it, he clenched his teeth as he belatedly recalled why he had rushed into the tomb in the first place. The answer was sprawled on the floor right next to him.
Amelia.
Kneeling, Subaru saw Amelia lying on the cold floor beside him. Peering at her face, he confirmed she was breathing. He was initially relieved by that fact, but the pained look on her sleeping face stabbed into his chest. Ah, Nig! Amelia was moaning with sweat on her brow as her face twisted in anguish and fear. Every so often, she shook her head in denial, as if she were desperately trying to run away from something.
A past you don't want to look at, something you have to face and deal with, huh? Subaru didn't know how much time had passed, but Amelia had entered the tomb long before him. That Subaru had come back first, in spite of that, meant she was having an exceptionally difficult time with the trial.
Amelia moaned faintly, like she was begging for help, as if ready to break into tears at any moment. The sight of her like that made Subaru's breath catch. Wanting to somehow ease her suffering, he touched her cheek with his finger. That instant,
Amelia?
Amelia's slender body sat up fast, almost like she'd been zapped with a jolt of electricity. The dramatic reaction made Subaru reach out with his arms, hugging Amelia against his own chest. Then, when she shuddered like she was having spasms, he called out to her over and over.
Amelia! Get it together, Amelia! Emilia!
Woo, Subaru?
Why, yeah, that's right. You can tell it's me. I'm so glad.
Subaru's arms had been wrapped around Amelia while he desperately cried out. After some time, the anguished expression on her face finally eased as she slowly opened her eyes. She seemed to be coming to her senses, letting Subaru breathe in relief after calling out her name since the episode started.
This is Era. I was.
Take it slow, don't panic. We're inside the tomb in the sanctuary. You came in here to fulfill a very important duty, and, sorry for taking so long.
Remembering that he was embracing her, Subaru abandoned his explanation midway and pulled back from Amelia's body. When Amelia hazily turned her head toward him, Subaru scratched his cheek and tried to pick up where he'd left off.
Amelia?
That's right. I began the trial, and then.
Amelia's thoughts returned to the moment right before she'd lost consciousness to the test. But her reaction had clearly been abnormal, and the sight of her set Subaru's heart deeply astir. Amelia embraced her own shoulders as if remembering the shuddering from mere moments before. Her face was pale, drained of blood, and he could hear her teeth chattering.
It wasn't me. I said it wasn't me, but.
Wait, Amelia! Calm down, please. Amelia, look at me, Amelia.
No, don't look at me like that. No, you're wrong. Don't. Blame me?
Subaru's voice never registered as Amelia cowered on the spot, covering her face with her palms in denial. Her tearful words turned into sobs, and her crystal-clear voice was so full of grief that it pained his heart. When Amelia crumpled onto the floor, Subaru still had no idea what had happened.
It's all right. I'm here. You're not alone. It's okay.
As Amelia shuddered in tears, Subaru tried his best to console her, to protect her, to care for her. He gathered her in his arms and gently stroked her back. During that time, Amelia continued to sob, seemingly unable to hear Subaru's voice.
The me does save me book.
It was not the man at her side consoling her, but the absent spirit whose name she continued to call.
She finally calmed down a short while ago and is now sound asleep.
Ram whispered the news when she came out of the room after Subaru had questioned her with a glance. Given her considerate demeanor, what had happened inside the room behind her must have been something else. While relieved at her reply, he wasn't relieved enough not to turn his worried eyes toward the closed door.
That expression isn't like you, Barusu. Normally you have such a sloppy face. Now that I have seen that somber grimace of yours, I truly have no wish to see it ever again.
Nobody asked you? Sorry, making you worry about me like that.
Ram reacted to those words with a ha and walked away. Before following in her footsteps, Subaru bit his lip as he turned his eyes toward the door one last time. Perhaps repeated regrets over his insufficient strength, his weakness, causing failure to pile upon failure, had steeled his heart.
Oh, I wonder, is Lady Emilia already
Cutting short his lingering sentiments at the closed door, he chased Ram deeper into the building. When he stepped into the room farthest back, he was greeted by Roswal, lying upon the bed. The place was at the back of the building, in the sanctuary devoted to Roswal's convalescence. From what Subaru had heard, it was actually Ryuzu's house, but it was currently on loan, the needs of the Lord of the Land being the highest priority. Thanks to being able to use that room, he had ended up carrying Emilia, fallen into disarray at the tomb, into the very same building.
Yeah, right now, she's sleeping in her room. Thanks to Ram, she shouldn't have to see any nightmares.
I used aromatic tea that acts as a sedative. Normally it would not work, but the Great Spirit is not currently at her side, so.
After Subaru replied to Rosewall, Ram put a hand on her pouch as she added her words to his. The tea ingredient seemed to be a different one from what Ram had previously used to lead Subaru astray with an illusion. That there were multiple types rather surprised him. It went without saying that he ought not to be concerned about bad effects inside his body, but
I still have this nagging suspicion you've been serving me poison all that time.
Too large a dose of any base ingredient for tea will become poison, nothing more. You are a petty man to hold a grudge all this time.
speaking those words with a composed expression, Ram stood right at Roswell's bedside. For all intents and purposes, the room was host to a one-on-one meeting between Subaru and Roswell. No other connected persons were welcome.
Garfield dragged his feet, but Rizu being so sensible was a huge help.
Due to her age and seniority, she has learned the value of discretion. Even Garfield understands that they cannot achieve their objectives without our cooperation, you see.
Roswell's words made Subaru recall how they'd looked when Subaru had parted ways with them at the tomb. The liberation of the sanctuary was Garfield and Code's cherished desire. If their side didn't cooperate, the other side might resort to force, but
If we intend to liberate them, they'll lend us a hand, huh? Damn complicated situation to be in.
Because Lady Amelia is with us, our interests are aligned. The obstinacy their side has displayed to date should ease. Incidentally, I heard that a follower of yours was present.
Follower, you mean Otto? We stuffed him in the cathedral for tonight. He actually came to the sanctuary because he wanted to meet you in the first place, Rosewall, but
But what?
Roswell had one eye closed as Subaru scratched his head. The reason for Otto's absence was exceptionally clear.
we're talking internal camp business from here on. I don't intend to drag a half-outsider like him into our problems past the point of no return.
I see, a wise decision. It would seem that you do not enjoy involving friends of yours in your troubles.
I wouldn't exactly call us friends, but, well, pretty much, yeah.
Having mulled over and accepted the circumstances, Subaru shrugged his shoulders, making no great effort to deny the point. From there, despite the absence of Amelia, the subject of their discussion,
How about tonight we hammer out important stuff for this camp that we've been kicking down the road?
You were the instigator behind the hunt for the white whale. You dispatched the Archbishop of the 7 deadly sins of the witch cult, taking aim at the mansion and the village. You formed an alliance with Lady Crush to gaucher, candidate for the throne. That seems to be your meritorious Sisyphus record.
Roswell's white-painted brow wrinkled as the detached tone of his voice deepened. When Subaru attempted to speak about their internal affairs, it was Roswell's mouth that summarized the ferocious combat occurring in his absence that Subaru should have spoken about first. When they were enumerated like that, even Subaru thought his exploits sounded unreal, but he made no effort to deny them. All of it was pure fact.
I had not asked in detail before the evacuation, but I cannot think the contents anything but fiction.
I thought you might say that, but there's no point hiding it, and I hadn't boasted about it before. Now come on and praise me.
Yes, good boy, good boy.
Put some heart in it.
In contrast to the serious Subaru, Ram treated him as flippantly as ever. However, the dull edge to the sarcasm behind her words was likely due to her surprise that Subaru had truly done all of those things. And the same seemed to go for Roswell, silent as he strove to comprehend those facts.
These are unexpected, unanticipated results.
Lowering his eyes with extremely deep feeling, Roswell spoke thus as his breath trickled out. Subaru, utterly convinced Roswell would praise him in some halfway frivolous manner, was dumbstruck by his reaction. Then Roswell fixed Subaru in his differently colored eyes as he said,
Subaru, do you recall the declaration you made at the beginning of the royal selection?
Like I could forget it. Like I should ever forget it. I remember each and every word.
Suddenly, he recalled the abominable memory, and the shame and self-loathing of it scorched his breast. Even if the numerous people of power and influence in that place had laughed it all off, Subaru alone was not permitted to forget, so that he might never repeat the recklessness, naivety, and stupidity of forgetting what was really important ever again. But Roswell responded to Subaru's reply with a solemn nod.
In that light, I think your meritorious service should be rewarded. You have proven the words you spoke in that place. Upon our safe departure from this place, I shall appoint you knight. Subduing the white whale with the Duchess and taking down an archbishop of the seven deadly sins are exploits that should be commended. You shall be known as Subaru Natsuki Knight. No one will laugh at you anymore.
In the name of helping Amelia, he'd opened his big fat mouth as a youth ignorant of his position. His naive dreams were broken on harsh reality time and time again. He had fallen first into despair, then madness. Then he'd cast everything aside as he raced forward with vengeance in his heart, only to be saved by deep feelings of love. These were the events that had brought him to where he was now. The prestige Rosewall promised would demonstrate all that time had actually meant something. It would mean everything Rem had done would also be rewarded, though memories of her actions existed in the minds of none, save Subaru himself.
If doing so gives meaning to that battle, I gratefully accept.
You should be proud of these exploits. With your own power, you have won the right to stand at Amelia's side.
It wasn't my power alone.
Subaru murmured it quietly enough that only he must have heard it. When Rosewall knitted his brows as a result, Subaru tightly closed his eyes for a moment, audibly cracked his neck, then continued.
You acting serious really throws me off. I'm grateful we can move this talk along, mind you.
You wound me. Am I not always serious? Besides, I promised, did I not, that I would face you directly the next time.
You as in me and Amelia. Amelia really should be here, but she's not.
Oh my, yay. You are quite mistaken.
When Rosewall averted his face, apparently uncomfortable at being misunderstood, Subaru's breath caught a little. Rosewall closed one eye as he corrected Subaru's correction, leaving the gaze of his yellow eye alone. That was his tell when he was hiding something deep within himself. Subaru got a bad feeling when he looked at Rosewall's eye and considered the earlier statement.
What do you mean by that? Why did you go out of your way to leave Amelia out of this?
Is it not rather, obvious dirty? Matters should be discussed only between trusted co-conspirators. I am not so gracious as to include someone I do not fully trust in such a meeting.
You mean you don't trust Amelia? What the hell are you talking about out of the blue like that?
When Rosewall, resting his back against the bed, calmly revealed his opinion, it drove Subaru into a rage. Of course it did. He was practically saying Amelia was not worthy of his trust. He, Rosewall L. Mathers, none other than Amelia's backer in the royal selection.
You're the one who nominated Amelia for the throne. Where do you get off saying that you don't trust Amelia?
Giving in to his anger, Subaru closed the distance between them to say what was on his mind. He violently rubbed his brow with his fingers over and over, as if it were a spell meant to convince his head, flush with blood, to calm down. It was his bad habit to suddenly lose it in the middle of a conversation. Just how much had he run in circles at the royal capital because of that short temper? He focused on deep breathing, breathe in, breathe out. He did this a second time and then a third.
Let's talk about everything in order, starting with this co-conspirator business.
Very well. Once you understand that point, it should serve as a reply to your earlier misgivings.
Subaru chained down his anger, which made Rosewall appear quite satisfied. Subaru crossed his arms and glared at the man, silently prodding him to continue.
Now then, first, the true meaning behind my use of co-conspirator in regards to you, it is quite simple. I wish you to continue providing Lady Amelia aid as you have done to date. Do as much as your feelings dictate until the day she sits upon the throne.
That goes without saying, but what the hell will you be doing?
Naturally, I shall do the same. Lady Amelia shall have my full support for victory in the royal selection so that she may become the ruler of this kingdom. You see, you and I share the same goal. Thus, we are co-conspirators.
If that's all you were planning, I'd just call you an ally. Co-conspirator means something different.
Gritting his teeth as Rosewall presented his terms, Subaru controlled the tone of his voice. He didn't think Roswell would invoke the word co-conspirators if his motives were limited to the proper ones he had just presented. In the first place, there would be no reason to exclude Amelia from the conversation if that were true. Besides,
What you're saying is full of contradictions. If you seriously wanted to put Amelia on the throne, what's your excuse for slacking off before coming here to the sanctuary?
What do you mean and by slacking off?
That's obvious. It was common knowledge Amelia publicly entering the royal selection would set the witch cult off on a rampage. Everyone said, oh, Rose Wall has to have prepared countermeasures, so where the hell were they? If that's not slacking off, what is?
Subaru replied to Roswell's feigned innocence with anger as he pounded home the suspicion he'd wanted to express for some time. Once he'd reached a boiling point, his dissatisfaction had only grown and grown without pause.
For starters, you hid info on the witch cult from Amelia, didn't you? Amelia didn't know a damn thing about the witch cult. She didn't understand at all what would happen when she joined the royal selection. If she'd known, everything could have gone differently. None of that would have had to.
As Subaru spoke, those hellish scenes came rushing back to mind. Hells he had peered into several times over. The villagers slaughtered, the children cruelly put to death, how Petra's corpse had stripped his mind bare, how Ram's dead body had carved a hole out of his soul, how Ram's death had robbed him of even the ability to mourn, and how Amelia's death.
You should have been there. If you'd been there, none of that would have happened. So why weren't you there?
Barusu.
The unconcealable pain and anguish in his voice made even Ram's cheeks stiffen. No tears flowed from him. However, with a disheveled face, Subaru accused Roswell. Only Subaru, who had seen those hellish scenes, had the right to accuse him.
If you'd stayed behind and protected everyone,
But while I was absent, you fulfilled my duty in my place, exploits that would make even a knight's heart swell in pride.
That's not the point.
His gratitude for being honored with the prestigious title of Knight rapidly diminished. Certainly, being awarded the knightly title gave firm meaning to that battle. However, to the Subaru of the present, that battle, in and of itself, was a symbol of his mistakes. If that battle had never happened,
Barusu, please, calm yourself.
Ram!
when Subaru unwittingly took a step forward, Ram glared at him from right up close. She shielded Rose Wall behind her back, quiet anger resting in her pink eyes.
Master Rosewall is injured. Even so, he can surely put a stop to any violence from one such as you with a single finger. I shall permit no rudeness when I am present, Barusu.
You're okay with this. It's the same for you. He left you behind like a sacrificial pawn. Roswell curled his tail and ran from the witch cult. Are you telling me I'm wrong?
I accept that without reservation. Ram forgives all Master Rosewall's deeds, including however she might be treated, or even eventually cast aside.
Then you forgive Ram being sacrificed for stupid stuff like this too.
The incomprehensible loyalty in Ram's reply set off Subaru like nothing else. He had avoided the issue several times, telling himself it wasn't the right time, putting off the truth he needed to speak to her about Rem, and how her memory had faded from the world, now existing only within Subaru's heart. With the master she had served for many years, even with her older twin sister, who was her other half, Rem.
I know not of whom you speak, but no other name means anything to me. To Ram, Master Roswell is everything, and all others come second.
The words Subaru had spat out, giving in to his emotions, were cut down by Ram without the slightest hesitation. Though Subaru had not planned it that way, her words were solid proof there was no memory of Rem within Ram, presenting him with the painful reality he had repeatedly ignored and avoided. Drained of strength, Subaru retreated a distance greater than the step forward he had made. The sight of Subaru's shoulders sinking made Ram knit her brows, whereupon Rosewall weightily shook his head.
Ram, stand aside. This conversation is between him and me only. I permit you to attend, but I do not permit you to speak. You understand? Yes.
Yes, I have no excuse for intruding.
Ram bowed, then attended Rosewall's bedside once more. As Subaru watched the exchange, he felt something like a breeze blowing through his exceptionally empty chest. Both of Rosewall's eyes narrowed at the sight of Subaru hanging his head at that desolate reality.
Tonight, I respond to you in earnest. This is what I have decided. That is why I shall respond to the doubts you toss at me with the truth. Why did I conceal information from Lady Amelia that I should have disclosed? Why was I absent from the mansion when the witch cult was coming to attack? These questions have a single answer.
Subaru put strength into his neck and lifted up his head. When accepting someone's reply to your suspicions, you at least had to look him in the eye. As Subaru did so, Rosewall closed one eye and said,
I guided events so they would be resolved without me needing to confront the witch cult.
Huh?
Subaru was dumbstruck, unable to digest the meaning of the words Rosewall had spoken openly while looking him in the eyes. When he crunched, chewed, and swallowed the words down, tasting their meaning with his brain, the contents permeated his very soul.
I don't get it. Then you mean, what? You ran. You actually did get cold feet when the witch cult was coming. And then, how could you?
Is it truly incomprehensible that I, among the kingdom's sages, a prominent man of influence, I, capable of a violent rampage, even greater than the menace of the witch cult, would avoid battle with the cults?
Damn right it is. You of all people could have easily taken care of all of Phil.
That is precisely why I did not. Had I resolved the matter, no credit would have gone to Lady Amelia, nor would there be any fame to be won by you, would there? That would have rendered it meaningless.
Who?
Subaru genuinely couldn't comprehend what was being said to him. The statement would have been 100 times better if it had been a joke or Rosewall toying with him. But Rosewall's face showed nothing that could fulfill Subaru's wish. Rosewall kept one eye closed as he continued.
The effect was tremendous, was it not? Indeed, ever since the witch cult was driven off, the attitude of the residents of Earlham Village toward Lady Amelia has been the complete opposite of what it once was. She has gone from a witch beyond their comprehension to the savior whose efforts protected their very lives, and their assessment of you has similarly risen, yes?
Do you even understand what you said just now?
The jolt inside Subaru's throat made his voice quiver indistinctly. However, the sounds that were not garbled made Rosewall cock his head, his lack of comprehension clear. It was that demeanor that gripped the bottom of Subaru's heart in incomprehensible fear. Rosewall had essentially said this. His understanding of the menace of the witch cult had been in no way deficient. He had anticipated that the cult would launch an attack, and, so forewarned, he had used the expected disaster for public relations purposes. But
That's just judging by hindsight. It ended up that way, that's all. If you'd resolved it all, Amelia definitely. Maybe Amelia and the villagers would still be in the same place. But
he recalled the scene from the previous evening, Amelia exchanging words with the residents who had evacuated to the sanctuary, where they had entrusted their hopes to her. Certainly, that scene might never have become reality if things hadn't gone as Rosewall had planned them.
But that's all hindsight. Did you even think about how many people would die because you weren't there to save them? Certainly, the casualties were minimized. I worked my ass off for that. But they weren't zero. People died!
Allow me to express my regret for the harm that befell our allies. It is, of course, only natural that our enemies are dead. The witch cult force was laid to waste, not a single member surviving. I could not have done it better myself. For this, you seek to apologize to me.
No. That's not it. That's not it at all.
In revulsion, Subaru weakly shook his head, rejecting Rosewall's words. Why wasn't he getting through? Why didn't he get it? Rosewall's intent had been just too cruel, too heartless. It was fine to charge straight toward your goal, but couldn't he just listen? But this wasn't simply charging forward. It was as if he was ignoring every obstacle that had fallen upon the roadway before him.
If I'd stayed a piece of garbage that couldn't accomplish anything, where would you be then? The result would be that nobody was saved. Not Amelia, not the villagers.
As a matter of fact, Subaru had laid eyes upon that result multiple times over. If anything, that result was inevitable. In most worlds, entrusting the matter to Subaru Natsuki had led to the worst-case scenario.
I left it in your hands because I trusted you.
Subaru wanted to know if that reply was sincere. When he heard it, all he could do was laugh out loud in despair.
That means you don't intend to give me a serious answer.
Perhaps it is not the answer you hoped for, but I have stated the truth. I decided that tonight I would not deceive you in any way. If I cannot speak of something, I shall say so, and if something is inconvenient, I shall hold my tongue, but I swear to you that no words I have spoken are lies.
Roswall's words were solemn. However, they invited too much distrust for belief. From the conversations they'd had to date, Subaru had no faith left over to take his words at face value. Despite Subaru's silent distrust, Roswall's expression did not falter as he continued.
I say again, where this matter is concerned, I made the decision to trust you. I trusted that you would strive for Lady Amelia's sake, that you would exhaust all efforts to achieve an alliance with Lady Crush, that you would put your life on the line to successfully fend off the attack by the witch cult and thus increase your renown.
What do you know about me? You've known me for only 2 months. Do I look like a man who can accomplish things like that?
Subaru was indignant. He was fed up with eloquent, pretty-sounding phrases that only made his ears hurt. His teeth were bared, his beady eyes grew tense, and Subaru pointed straight at Roswall as he howled.
There's no way in hell. When you parted ways with me, I was a piece of garbage through and through. It was only after that I changed from garbage to something halfway decent. What came after was only because it was the only thing left to find inside of me. What did you see that lets you trust me like that?
It wasn't a discussion. If the other party had no intention of being serious, conversation was futile. Roswall's demeanor toward the raggedly breathing Subaru had not changed one iota. Therefore, that gaze itself was his reply. He intended neither to correct Subaru's view nor to state the objective truth.
It would seem our conversation for this evening is at an impatience. This evening is at...
Roswall declared the conversation over almost as if he could see straight into Subaru's inner being. Subaru had no objection either, at the very least, not until he was ready to engage in a real conversation.
Though your esteem of me has plummeted, I cannot call that a pure disappointment. Incidentally, I think I hardly need to confirm. But concerning tonight, Lady Amelia...
I'm not saying a word, like I could tell her anyway. Besides, whatever you're planning, whether you're laughing behind whatever face you make or not, what matters now is the result of Amelia's own choices.
Her determination to challenge the tomb's trial, her promise to liberate the villagers urging her onward from the barrier, her resolve toward the royal selection from that point on. Amelia had chosen all these things for herself. It was absolutely not because she was dancing to Roswall's tune, manipulated by his shady schemes.
Though you are governed by anger within your mind, you correctly grasp the situation. For the sake of Lady Amelia's royal selection, there must be no discord created between her, myself, and the villagers. Meaning you have become an adult, you are a worthy co-conspirator indeed.
There's no good death waiting for you.
I am aware of this. I shall without doubt fall into hell. Therefore, I must exhaust all efforts to bring my ambition to fruition in this era before that day comes.
Subaru breathed hard at the stifling situation as Roswall gave him the adoring gaze a predator had for his prey. Subaru returned that gaze in enmity before turning his back. The conversation was over. He didn't want to spend another instant in the man's presence. But
I have one last thing to ask you. I'm not sure you'll want to give me a straight answer, though.
What is it? My earlier promise to answer truthfully remains in effect. Ask whatever you wishes.
It's about Beatrice.
The instant Subaru invoked that name, all composure vanished from Rosewall's face. Beatrice, he murmured to himself, regaining the aloof, clownish demeanor that had reigned until the moment before.
You pay a great deal of attention to that girl. What is it you wish to ask?
I had a chance to speak with her before coming here to the sanctuary, and though she wouldn't tell me much, she said all the answers to my doubts can be found here. If you're in a mood to speak seriously, what do you think she meant by that?
When their conversation in the archive of forbidden books drew to an end, Beatrice had spoken those words to Subaru with a tearful face. Frederica had also said Beatrice was one of the very few people related to Roswell with whom he shared his thoughts. If that was so, then Roswell might understand just why Beatrice had had that sad look on her face.
Before I reply to that question, there is something I wish to ask for myself.
What then?
To aid Lady Amelia, you entered the tomb. By whatever twist of fate, it seems the tomb's punishment did not go into effect. Did you meet someone within the tomb?
The question Rosewall posed made Subaru sink into thought for one brief moment. Despite hearing that it was dangerous, Subaru had rushed into the tomb to rescue Amelia. Though Subaru had, in fact, undergone the trial, he hadn't spoken a word of that to Rosewall. One reason was that the flow of conversation hadn't given him much of a chance, but the biggest reason was Subaru's lack of trust toward him. Rosewell had decided to use even the witch cult's onslaught to increase Amelia's popularity. If he knew that Subaru had challenged the tomb, Subaru couldn't even fathom what schemes he might come up with this time. In the first place, it was unclear to whom he was referring. Subaru hadn't met anyone in the tomb.
What are you talking about? It was inside a tomb, like there was room to meet anyone. A zombie, maybe?
I do not know what you mean by zombie, but no, that answer is sufficient. Thus, my reply to your question is simple. It is not yet time to speak about the matter.
Ha! So that's your story in the end. When will you be able to talk about it then?
That depends on you. Though, if possible, I would like tonight's pact to be invoked as soon as possible.
His manner of speech was deeply suggestive, but Rosewell did not seem ready to explain any further. Thinking back, Subaru felt deeply despondent at how evasive Roswell had been from start to finish. Everything, even the prestige that came with the title of knight, had been for the purpose of setting up a favorable conversation with Subaru.
Well then, Subaru! Let us share pleasant conversation again.
Subaru, showered by Roswell's sarcastic-sounding words even on the eve of his departure, vengefully slammed the door shut.
Subaru?
Subaru scratched his head at the fact that he'd been addressed by name despite entering the room with great care. When he quietly closed the door and turned around, the girl on the bed, Amelia, seemed to have just awakened from a deep sleep as their eyes met.
Sorry, did I wake you?
No, I woke up a little earlier. I was surprised you were so quiet, Subaru.
Keeping the noise down when I walk has become a habit, but my scheme has been foiled. I was actually thinking I'd play a prank on Amelia Tan while she slept.
A prank? You mean like writing on my face?
You got me. I definitely don't have the courage to try a worse prank either.
The way Amelia tilted her head, the thought of other things between boy and girl, not even crossing her mind, took the wind out of Subaru's sails. Regardless, now that she'd awoken, he sat by her side and checked the state of everything else. The color of her face and her breathing were both normal. Her face was cute, too. She'd returned to her normal self without any noticeable issues.
I am sorry, Subaru. I really lost it when I woke up in the tomb.
Hey, that's fine. That's fine. More importantly, I was worried you might have bumped something when you first fell down. It really is a lot easier on both of us if I can watch you without being separated.
Yeah, it might well be.
Subaru, replying in what he thought was his usual flippant tone, narrowed his brows at Amelia's reaction. She lowered her eyes, looking as if she was thinking about something as she clutched Subaru's sleeve. It was as if she were unconsciously grasping his hand to allay her worries. Subaru stared at the gesture when,
Ah.
following Subaru's gaze,
Amelia was startled when she realized her fingers were grasping the sleeve of his tracksuit. She proceeded to release her fingers, her face reddening as she waved her hand to and fro.
I didn't mean to. Huh, that's strange. Why did I do something like,
My Amelia Tan finally wants me enough to subconsciously reach out her hand. Hey, if you want to rely on me for everything, you can just come out and say it.
that's totally not it. My hand probably just slipped.
You sure denied that fast, and what do you mean by slipped?
Amelia shook her head at the half-joking assertion, wearing a strained, embarrassed smile. Subaru did not press the issue. After all, she didn't seem to want to talk about the worries subconsciously connected to her actions just then. And naturally, those were related to the trial that night.
Can I ask you something about the trial? What kind of past did you see inside?
Subaru, how do you know about?
If it's tough to talk about, I won't ask about the details. I have a past I don't want to talk about, too.
That's not what How? Do you know that the trial showed me my past?
As Amelia's violet eyes opened wide, her words made Subaru let an ah out of his throat. Certainly, no one was supposed to know the details of the test within the tomb before entering, and even then, they would only find out if they were challengers themselves. Of course, Subaru could have just told Amelia that he'd undergone the trial just like she had, but looking back at Amelia's trembling eyes, Subaru swallowed the words with which to convey that fact. Given that she was already shaken and discouraged, he feared that telling Amelia he'd taken the same trial, but had overcome it, might push her farther into a corner. Nor was this the only reason not to tell her. Accordingly, Subaru closed his eyes, pushing the role of the villain onto someone absent from that place.
That jerk Rosewall was keeping quiet that he knew about the trial. He said something about facing your past, but I don't really know the details past that.
Is that so? Did Roswell say anything else?
Or maybe that it's 3 parts in all, and seeing the past is the first one?
A barefaced lie, Subaru's reply, made Amelia look dispirited. 3 parts, she echoed. At least she didn't question Subaru's assertion that Rosewall was the source of the information. In reality, he'd heard it from Echidna, but he avoided such a problematic explanation.
Setting the number of problems aside, today's challenge didn't go all that well, did it?
So it would seem. I tried hard, but it suddenly ended midway.
Sorry, I think that's because I woke you up. Seems being touched from the outside wakes you up. Come to think of it, I feel like I got told that from the start.
Who told you that?
Who was it, I wonder?
The creases of Subaru's brow deepened as he tried to wrap his head around it. The thought easily rolled off his tongue. But where had the idea come from? When he thought about it, nothing came to mind, so he put off forming a conclusion.
Let's switch topics. Tonight was no good, but that just means you can take it again. You can take it as many times as you need to. So the rest is up to how you feel, Amelia Tan.
How I feel.
I could tell from the look on your face as you slept that it wasn't a warm, fuzzy past. But if it's not you who liberates this sanctuary, there's no meaning to it. That's what I think. Anyway, for that, are you going to challenge it again?
When pressed to choose, Amelia took in a deep breath and fell silent. Her trembling fingers went to her own neck, touching the green crystal that dangled from it, but her only family made no response. Amelia was hard-pressed for an answer as Subaru watched her, silently awaiting her decision. If, for example, by any chance, Amelia recoiled from challenging the trial again, too afraid to face her past, Subaru did have an idea. It just took someone else qualified to do it instead, and that would be Subaru Netsuki. But
Subaru, you idiot.
Hey, I'll accept any answer you. Wait, what's with the sudden insult?
If you say that with gentle eyes and a gentle voice, there's no way I'll say I can't, is there? I'm not a very smart girl, but even I know that this is my duty.
Amelia!
Don't pamper me. Trust me. Maybe I don't sound very convincing saying that after today, but...
right after speaking with such strong resolve, Amelia flushed as she lowered her eyes. However, her words made Subaru exhale at length. That's not true at all. he said, shaking his head. Amelia had said she'd do it. Then she certainly would. From all the time he'd seen her, not just that night, Subaru genuinely trusted her.
Hey, I'm with you for makeup tests or anything else. I trust you. I'll wait.
Thank you.
When Subaru smiled at her, Amelia finally regained the strength to send a charming smile back at him. It was a small, fleeting smile, but the resolve it contained made Subaru lose himself in the sight of it for a moment.
But the one thing that pains my heart is the trouble it must be for the people of Earlham Village.
She'd promised them she would definitely liberate them from the barrier and return them to their village. She hoped that they were not people to shun someone upon learning of her failure, but she couldn't help its weighing on her mind. But Subaru had an idea where that was concerned.
Can you let me handle that part?
You have something in mind?
I do. I don't plan on causing Amelia Tan or the villagers any trouble.
Understood. I trust you, Subaru.
When Subaru thumped his hand on his chest, Amelia narrowed her eyes and immediately nodded. Subaru was a little surprised at the instant decision, whereupon Amelia gave a tiny, pleasant smile.
As if I doubt you now. Subaru, I trust you.
Those words left Subaru quietly closing his eyes, thinking hard in his own mind. Amelia's trust was a product of Subaru's actions to date, and even if those had proceeded according to the sketch drawn by Roswell's own hand, it would not be that way from here on.
No way I'm gonna let everyone dance on top of your palm. I will not permit Roswell's will to intervene as it had so far. And there in the sanctuary, it was Subaru Natsuki's job to prove it.
3 days later, Subaru executed the plan that he had mentioned to Amelia.
I must say, I am impressed you managed to persuade Garfield.
Otto shared his thoughts while Subaru checked the condition of the dragon carriage with Patslash, his favorite land dragon, hitched to it. Subaru's back was turned as he responded with a, "Yeah," before continuing.
It took a little time, but it's a big help that I somehow got through to him. Though from my perspective, it was difficult to believe he would listen to what we had to say. You might be a merchant, but you're not a good judge of people, are you? I suppose not. Having associated with all kinds of company to date, and never earning even the slightest bit of profit without a great deal of toil, it's enough that even I doubt my own eyes.
Otto responded to Subaru's barb with a shrill, resentful comment of his own. But Subaru understood why he felt that way. To begin with, the point of taking Otto to the sanctuary was that Subaru could fulfill his promise of granting him an audience with Roswell.
And yet to think I would go 4 whole days without meeting him once, only to return to the village where we started. I'm sorry about that, but you won't be able to talk to Roswell until the heat dies down. If you want me to introduce you with a ton of sparks flying in the air, I can force the issue, but... No. Please, there's no need. I do not want to become involved in a strange situation like that.
Otto's recoiling like that had been partly responsible for the delay in introducing him and Roswell. Scratching his cheek, Subaru focused on what lay ahead of their dragon carriage, the other carriages for evacuating the villagers assembled at the entrance to the sanctuary. There were a total of 50 villagers and cooperating traveling merchants in 7 dragon carriages, all moving in one rather large convoy. Subaru and Otto had arranged to bring them along on their return to Earlham Village. The condition that was required for it to happen, that the barrier enveloping the sanctuary be lifted, remained unmet, but
Lady Amelia ain't got a choice. From the moment she stepped inside the barrier, she either lifts it or she ain't leaving. They ain't got no value as hostages no more, so go ahead and return them to their village. Garfield.
as Subaru watched the villagers prepare to embark, a figure with blonde hair and a bad attitude approached. The man, who always had a dangerous look in his eyes, glanced over, glaring at Subaru and Otto as they stood side by side. That gaze made Otto let out a small cry as he meekly retreated to the other side of the dragon carriage. Even considering the impact from their first meeting, it was quite an attitude.
Don't boss him around too much. He's a super important... Wait, why is he important again?
If you're wondering out loud, how the hell am I supposed to know? Besides, him acting like a chicken is his problem.
Garfield crinkled his nose as he sourly folded his arms, but though his actions were frequently crude, Garfield was a man unexpectedly attentive to details. Subaru had learned that thanks to having come into contact with him repeatedly over the last few days.
Who'd have thought you were taking care of the villagers who'd evacuated?
What's that? Can't be helped, damn it. Not like I can have the old hags pushing themselves too hard, and a lot of mad don't want to get friendly with strangers either. The less trouble, the better.
Meaning my suggestion put us in the same boat?
Pretty much. It's the Maringo Island way and stuff.
Subaru was tempted to ponder how he was managing to hold such a normal conversation with Garfield, but Subaru ignored that and lightly bowed his head to Garfield once more. After all, without Garfield's cooperation, the freeing of hostages wouldn't have been possible.
Cut that out. It's embarrassing. I told you not to bow your head and stuff.
Even if you say that, I have to do this much. I know you guys have your own circumstances and you accepted this because it suits your own interests too, but
Welcoming strangers into the sanctuary meant exhausting some resources. The settlement did have its own fields, and Rosewall had arranged for the regular delivery of supplies, but a prolonged emergency situation wasn't good for either population. That was why Subaru had brought the matter up with Garfield, who had in turn spoken with Ryuzu and the other residents, resulting in that morning's freeing of the hostages.
that's why I'm grateful. The villagers, their feelings are a little mixed, but they're happy too. Besides, we really stuck it to Roswell.
Yeah! That makes me feel good too. I'll accept your thanks then.
When Subaru gave a mischievous grin, Garfield revealed his fangs and let out a hearty laugh. Not only had the proposal been Subaru's idea, but Rosewall had approved when he had been informed after the fact. From what Subaru had picked up through Ram, that had to have given Rosewall plenty of heartburn. Ever since the nighttime discussion a few nights earlier, Subaru had stubbornly resisted meeting Rosewall again. At the very least, he didn't intend to forgive Rosewall until the ReZero Starting Life in Another World by Tappy Nagatsuki, casted six-tale novel. Please subscribe to our channel. Ladder made a proper apology. That was unfortunate for Otto, but
Subaru,
just when there was a tiny break in the conversation, a voice clear as a bell called out Subaru's name. When Subaru looked back, Amelia was waving as she walked toward them.
We'll talk again later, when we're on the road.
Noticing her approach, Garfield whispered, only that into Subaru's ear before moving off from his side. He walked off with an exaggerated swagger as Amelia arrived, cocking her head to the side as she posed a question.
did I butt into your conversation with Garfield?
Oh, that's all right. It's not like it was anything important, and Amelia Tan's my top priority.
I'm really happy to hear that, but right now the villagers should be your top priority.
When the corners of Amelia's eyebrows lowered as she gave a conflicted smile, Subaru nodded in reply to her request. Then she turned her mind's attention toward the villagers' dragon carriages, where preparations to return were underway. Subaru had a strong grasp on the complex feelings Amelia harbored inside.
I really do think lifting the barrier and heading out like a big parade would be great, but
I'm sorry. It's because I haven't overcome the trial even after several days, but I don't think it's right they shouldn't be reunited with their families because of me.
Her voice full of feelings of self-reproach, Amelia bit her thin lips in apparent regret over her own powerlessness. In the 3 days since they'd first challenged the trial, the tomb's methodology had become clearer bit by bit. Just as Subaru had remembered, it was possible to undertake it any number of times. However, it could only be undertaken once per night. Amelia had made an attempt every night without rest, only to be met with failure each time. When night fell, Subaru watched Amelia confront her past at the tomb, and he saw the pain break her heart, causing her to return tearful and haggard. Repeated painful experiences had resulted in a rising pile of failures. Moreover, he couldn't even begin to imagine how much her spirit had been worn down in the process.
anyway, you can't get impatient and force yourself. Since ancient times, no one has managed to accomplish anything good with those two things. I'll get the villagers back home and come back here right away, but it still won't be till tomorrow that I can make it. You can put off tonight's challenge if you want, you know?
Subaru couldn't remain in the sanctuary to be at Amelia's side that night. Because of that, Subaru had proposed several times already that she take a break from challenging the tomb, but Amelia firmly shook her head this time as well.
It's all right. It's true. I'm they're impatient, but I'm the one who said I'd do this. I don't want to disappoint the villagers or the people of the sanctuary.
Gotcha. All right, then. I won't say any more.
Thank you. Also, though, you should also be mindful of the villagers. Be mindful of Frederica.
Now that they'd checked off what each had to do, Amelia worriedly added that at the end, her worry was rooted in their lack of knowledge about where Frederica stood. If Ram's warning was anything to go by, Frederica was involved with those opposed to the liberation of the sanctuary. Subaru hadn't the faintest idea how she'd treat him and Otto upon their return to the mansion.
If Frederica bears Lady Amelia ill will, the mansion should be an empty shell right about now.
Huh? Ram? What'd you come here for?
Ram, slipping through the line of dragon carriages, came over and promptly joined their conversation. Much like with Roswal, Subaru wasn't feeling particularly positive about her. Considering the issue of Ram and her behavior, namely her taking Roswal's side, Subaru was standoffish with her. Ram feigned ignorance of the discord with Subaru, narrowing her almond-shaped eyes as she spoke.
Greetings, Barusu. I have merely come out of my way to see you off in Master Roswal's stead. As a lord, it pains him greatly to not be present as his people begin to depart.
You've got some nerve to be.
In addition, he sends a message to Barusu for his return to the mansion. If Frederica concerns you, I believe it is all the more important you should hear it.
When Subaru clicked his tongue at the preamble, Ram dangled the existence of information he could not afford to dismiss in front of his nose. Truth be told, it was very difficult for Subaru to endure going along with it, but
What should I do then, if Frederica is a concern?
Lady Amelia is so forthright. You should learn from her, Barusu.
Ram employed Amelia to sarcastically pester Subaru, clapping her hands with excessive glee. Then, as they caught their breath, Ram continued in a quiet tone of voice.
He said that if you are concerned about confronting Frederica, rely upon Lady Beatrice.
Rely on Beatrice? Hey, listen closer when people explain stuff. That's a majorly high difficulty thing in itself. In this situation, just meeting her isn't simple.
It is you who should listen, Barusu. Please be quiet until I am finished. Certainly, it is not easy to speak to Lady Beatrice. That is where Master Roswal's message should come into play.
The grave accents of her voice made Subaru swallow his words and indicate for her to continue. His gaze made Ram lick her lips before she spoke.
He instructed, upon returning to the mansion, to say this. Roswal said, "Ask your questions."
Questions.
Ram does not know the details. However, Master Roswal stated that once this reaches Lady Beatrice's ears, the situation shall change. I came only to deliver this message to you.
Ram made that declaration with a composed look, showing that she was not of a mind to entertain any questions about the matter. Subaru mulled over her demeanor and the words she had spoken. In the end, he grimaced because he didn't understand their meaning.
So if I tell Beatrice that, she'll listen to what I have to say, is that it?
Who knows? That surely depends on you, Barusu. See the villagers home safely, please.
Placing a very strong emphasis on that last part, Ram turned her back to him and left, her business concluded. Taken aback by her attitude, Subaru scratched his head.
Ram, no, Roswal's probably hiding something, damn it. Amelia?
Eh? Yes, nothing. No worries.
In the blink of an eye, Emilia's gloomy expression vanished as she straightened her back and turned to face Subaru. Then she smiled pleasantly at Subaru once more before she continued.
I don't know how far we should trust the advice from Roswal that Ram gave us. But don't be reckless. May the blessings of the spirits be with you.
To a spirit mage, this was an important phrase, special words to send others off. Subaru answered with a solemn nod.
Though that might not sound very convincing coming from me right at this moment.
That's not true.
I'll be back. You hang in there too, Amelia.
Instead of telling her not to be impatient or reckless, he tried to say something else. Rather than reinforce her worries, he tried to convey his trust to bolster her spirit, even if it only helped a tiny bit.
You too, Subaru.
Emilia nodded, and it was right around then that the preparations to depart were complete. With Emilia, and subsequently Ram, seeing them off, Subaru and the others set off from the sanctuary in their dragon carriages. At a steady pace, it wouldn't even take a half day to reach Erlen village. The main concern on the road ahead was the barrier that blocked the passage of those who were mixed and led people astray. But
If you know the right path and you're a pureblood who doesn't trigger that barrier, ain't no problem. Ain't like either. OS want to keep more people with grudges than we need.
Beyond that, I'm grateful that you offered yourself as a guide to make sure we don't get lost, but
Garfield was inside the dragon carriage, sitting in his seat at an angle and having a great time. Sitting opposite him, Subaru leaned on an elbow and sighed.
you're not guiding us. Hell, you're practically falling asleep. Did you ditch the job?
Now, it's just that black land dragon of yours is too damn good. She's got a perfect grasp of the road from just running down at once, so there ain't nothing for me to do.
Aside from her taste in men, my Patlash really is perfect, isn't she?
Subaru was very fond of his favorite dragon, whose specs were so high they had earned Garfield's seal of approval. But that she picked Subaru as her owner might have been indicative of a certain flaw in her character. Either way, her amazing performance was why Subaru had ended up one-on-one with Garfield. Over at the driver's seat, Otto made a point of having nothing to do with the conversation, and so their chatter naturally drifted to the topic that they had set aside until now.
So, before you head out, there's something I wanted to talk to you about. Unless you're real bad at guessing. I think you can imagine what it is.
Sorry, setting aside opinions on whether I'm good or bad at guesswork, there's a whole bunch of problems I can think of. Unless you tell me the specifics, no way I'm gonna understand what you mean.
Well, ain't that rough. In that case, I'll lend you a hand in solving your problems.
Garfield spread his thighs where he sat, turning a sharp gaze toward Subaru. Subaru's breath caught as he recoiled from those eyes that were not so much piercing as they were cutting.
The way you say that doesn't sound like a good omen to me, in other words.
Hey, third rate, you took the trial, didn't you?
The question Garfield posed in a low voice, like the guttural growl of a beast, ran right through Subaru. When Subaru narrowed his eyes at the question, Garfield shook his head.
Don't hide it. I ain't picking on ya. I'm wondering, like people not qualified take the punishment once, and then they're free to enter the second time and after. That's just a guess. Not like anyone's tried it.
If you want to tell Roswell to try it, I'm not gonna stop you.
Me? I'd love him to try too, but Rand'd smack me to death, so I'll pass.
With a pained look and a flippant tongue, Garfield bared his fangs and laughed a little. As he pointed out, he'd come to the conclusion that Subaru had been able to enter the tomb because it was his second time. There was no way for Garfield to be sure, but it seemed he intended to make something out of it.
Let's say for the sake of argument that's true, what do you plan to do about it?
Now, hold on. I figured you wouldn't cop to it. That's just a what if. So I'll talk about something easier for you to... This is GAM and Gum Bridge building level stuff.
Garfield unleashed another one of his trademark mystery phrases, and while Subaru felt his mouth go dry from the incredibly not casual level of pressure it suggested, he drew in his chin, indicating he would at least hear out the proposal. Accepting this, Garfield continued.
It's real simple. If you're qualified, then you take the trial in Lady Amelia's place. Lift the barrier for me and my people.
Wait, I can't do that. That assumes Amelia's gonna fail.
Garfield was proposing that Subaru challenge it in Amelia's place. Certainly, the thought had grazed Subaru's head several times over. As a matter of fact, Subaru had already passed one of the 3 parts of the trial, leaving 2 obstacles to go. If pressed, he would admit he held a strong desire to challenge it. But that was something he wanted to avoid. If he did that, all Amelia's struggles to date would be for...
Don't get me wrong. Me and the old hag want to be freed from the sanctuary. And we don't much care who does it.
That's.
You wantin' Lady Amelia to do it so she can have the old hags and the hostages thanking her. That's your problem, including wanting her to overcome a hateful past and take the sting off it. That's all your problem. It ain't got nothing to do with us.
Subaru couldn't summon a rebuttal to Garfield's words. Looking at it from Garfield's point of view, of course that's how he saw the sanctuary situation. Just as he had said, having Amelia undertake the trial and hoping that she would overcome it was essentially the solution to a personal problem. When Subaru hung his head at this sound argument, Garfield sighed as he added more.
Is the past really something you gotta overcome in the first place? For 3 days I've been watching Lady Amelia challenge the trial, same as you. It's breaking her. Seeing her come out all messed up like that. I can't stand to watch.
Crinkling the skin of his nose, Garfield brought up the heartbreaking sight of Amelia right after emerging from the tomb. The number of times Amelia had failed to overcome the trial were adding up. But it wasn't just that it was the sight of her turning back, broken, panicked, calling for Puck, then finally sleeping as if her strength was exhausted. The ordeal was excruciating. But what lay beyond her after she overcame, that was...
I believe Amelia will overcome it. That's why I'll.
And you're free to hope she does. But can Lady Amelia really overcome her past? Could it be that crying and going all I'm scared is what she really wants to do? Me, I can't really tell.
What Amelia really wants.
The words Garfield threw out struck Subaru like a shower of cold water. Subaru had meant to respect Amelia's wishes and devotedly support her until the matter was resolved. However painful it was to climb that wall, as long as Amelia challenged it without fail, he would continue lending her a hand. Amelia, challenging the tomb in spite of her trembling legs, heedless of the cry of her heart. Right then, when Garfield said it out loud, Subaru arrived at the possibility for the first time.
The possibility that she wanted to be rescued, that she was searching for salvation. If in her own heart she truly wanted someone else to fight in her place, then who should be that someone if not Subaru himself? That's one more thing I've got to really talk to her about when I get back.
Who?
Nothing setting aside whether to accept your proposal or not, it sure does sound like it'd help solve my current problems. Gotta say, you really are a surprising guy.
Ha! Don't say stupid stuff. Me, I just want to improve my odds even a little bit.
Clenching his fangs in annoyance, Garfield turned his face away from Subaru. Rather than this being a cute reaction in the vein of concealing a blush, he seemed genuinely irritated, which brought a pained smile to Subaru's face. But when it came to his assertion about improving the odds, there was a lot there Subaru could agree with.
What do you want to do when you get out of the sanctuary?
Well, ain't that out of the blue? What I want to do once I'm out, huh?
You've been twisting arms left and right to get the barrier lifted and escape, right? I was thinking you had to have something you wanted to do on the outside.
He'd innocently raised the topic, but Garfield looked completely taken aback. It was as if he found the question unexpected, or even as if it was something he'd never thought of before.
That's something only a person who can freely come go would say. If you can go wherever the hell you want, you can understand how me and the old hags feel, right?
Finally, Garfield slowly spat those words out. Subaru felt like he'd been insulting, but Garfield stood up, giving him no opportunity to apologize.
We're close to the barrier. This is as far as I go with you. Take care of the rest, you hear?
You bet-er. I'll be coming back real soon. Not like I have zero worries about stuff, though. He was worried about returning to the mansion. On top of that, he felt a duty to make sure of certain things. Petra's safety was obviously one concern, but even more than that, making sure whether a certain sleeping girl was safe.
Well, crap. Can't be helped.
Garfield?
Garfield scruffed up his blonde hair as he harshly clicked his tongue. Surprised by the gesture, Subaru turned toward him as he put a hand into his own waistcloth. Then,
Take this with you.
This crystal, it's the same as the one Frederica had.
The piece of jewelry Garfield took out of his pocket and offered Subaru was a necklace of a blue crystal on a string. The gem looked identical to the one Frederica had possessed. The twin blue crystals were undeniable proof that Garfield and Frederica shared some kind of bond.
I don't intend to talk about our circumstances. Just, it's trouble for us if you don't come back. So I'm giving this to you. In a pinch, show it to Frederica.
Taking this before I head off makes me worry I'll get teleported by the barrier all over again.
If you don't need it, just give it back. But having it might help you in a pinch.
When Subaru turned the crystal over in his palm, Garfield reached out like he wanted to take it back. With a grand gesture, Subaru escaped from his hand and stuffed the crystal he had received into his pocket. He didn't know what lay between Garfield and Frederica. They were likely blood relatives. The barrier that supposedly rejected the passage of anything considered mixed seemed like a literal impassable wall between the pair. If, perhaps, the barrier was the reason Frederica had been scheming,
I have to find out what Frederica meant to do. So, well, wait for good news, Kay.
Ha! What's this good news business? If it ain't like Baliamore Roy makes the sun go down, then no way I'd ever tell the difference.
Subaru, in his attempt to bid Garfield farewell on a positive note, drew the first smile from Garfield he had seen that wasn't related to his ferocity. However,
I still have no idea what makes the sun go down.
Subaru remained ignorant of just what the mystery phrase pressing against his back meant. 8 hours after setting off from the sanctuary, and 6 since parting ways with Garfield, Subaru arrived back at Rosewell Manor just before sunset.
Will you really be all right without me there with you?
Otto spoke with a concerned, subdued voice from the dragon carriage halted in Earlham Village. Now that the refugees had been safely transported back to the village, Otto and Subaru watched as moving reunions broke out between family members who had been temporarily separated. Otto was no doubt keeping his voice down because he didn't want to interrupt the reunions.
Yeah, I'll head back to the mansion by myself for now. If nothing happens, I'll send my thoughts over to you straight away, so hook up with me after getting that, Kay.
Mr. Natsuki, you have so many distractions. I am concerned that my accepting your precious thoughts might leave you in dire straits. I'm joking, but let me speak seriously. If you are trying to be considerate toward me, then
I won't say that's completely inaccurate, but you're my insurance.
insurance? Insurance?
Nodding back toward him, Subaru explained.
At the very least, you're the only other person here who knows our circumstances. If you figure something really did happen to me, I want you to avoid doing anything crazy and report back to the sanctuary.
I would rather not speak of such things, even if it's only just in case, but
Well, since you're our crew's Mr. Dependable Merchant, I'm counting on ya.
yes, leave it to. Wait, since when have you arbitrarily lumped me in with your faction?
When Otto went shrill at being entrusted with a job he didn't remember accepting, Subaru forced a smile and set out from the village. Straddling Patslash, he raced like the wind up the road from the village to the mansion.
What? Are you worried about me? It's all right. I'm not gonna cause you any trouble.
When they arrived at the front gate, Subaru dropped off Patslash's back and rubbed the tip of her nose. His favorite land dragon responded with a lively gesture, rubbing him with her head, and accompanied Subaru on his way to the mansion's entrance hall. The day had stretched into dusk. The orange sun shone on Rosewell Manor, nestled between the mountains. Gradually, he sensed night approaching from the sky to the east.
First, door number 1.
Subaru spoke those words as he stood before the doors and put his hand on the knocker. Taking a deep breath, he strongly knocked with it, announcing the arrival of a guest to all within the building. For a time, he waited for a response from inside, but
Door number 1, no good. Proceeding to door number 2.
when the supposedly present servants didn't reply, Subaru suppressed a sigh as he gently pressed his hand to the doors. When he applied a little pressure, he found that they had been carelessly left unlocked. Without much difficulty, he slipped through the gap between the doors and trespassed on the mansion. The worried breath given off by the land dragon at the very end, a moment before the doors separated them, weighed heavily on Subaru's heart. Steeling himself, Subaru turned his eyes toward the interior of the mansion he hadn't seen for 3 days. At the very least, the broad entry hall was quiet, with no sign that anyone was near him. The words Ram had shared prior to his departure abruptly rose from the back of his mind. If Frederica did bear any ill will, she was no doubt already gone from the mansion. If the worst case was that Frederica had gone off somewhere, he didn't care. The problem was,
Whether she left by herself or took Petra and Rem with her.
he wasn't thrilled with either possibility, but he especially didn't want to think about the latter. He had the handkerchief on his wrist and the crystal Garfield had entrusted to him. Relying on the presence of those two things, he advanced, stepping farther into the mansion. His brows scrunched up at a sense of foreboding. Suburo was on the verge of calling out to the occupants in a loud voice. Without the sight of the people who ought to have been there, the familiar mansion corridors felt like unknown territory. When Subaru walked into the hallway of the main wing and peered within, he was greeted by a strange sight. As far as he could see, every single door in the corridor had been opened.
Doesn't seem like someone did this to air the place out.
From what Subaru could tell, only the doors had been thrown wide open. There was no sign anyone had touched the windows. All the rooms were impeccably tidy. Though that served as proof of Frederica and Petra's capabilities as servants, the empty tidiness clawed painfully at Subaru's chest. Something was wrong. Something felt off. Something was very unnatural. A detestable feeling, a foul timidity crept around inside Subaru's body. With a deep breath and a hand to his chest, he held it in check by force. He'd already noticed that this was a bizarre emergency situation. After the many dangerous situations he'd found himself in, Subaru's survival instincts were currently ringing loud and clear. There was some kind of issue there in the mansion. If he'd followed his initial judgment call, Subaru would have immediately left the mansion and rendezvoused with Otto. The best plan was to tell his allies of the strange occurrence in the mansion so that they could devise a way to address it. If the mansion hadn't contained so many people he wanted to save within its walls, that's exactly what he would have done.
He understood it was reckless and irrational. Even so, he had to be sure. Subaru didn't know how long it would take to return here with allies. The more time passed, the greater the chance the girls inside the mansion would be spirited away. He couldn't weigh them all on a scale. He just couldn't. Who to put first?
Gripping the handkerchief on his wrist as if to make sure it was still there, Subaru's brain tossed and turned enough to bring it to a boil. The people in the mansion related to Subaru in some way numbered 4, all girls. Among them, Frederica was the lowest priority. At the moment, it was unclear to Subaru where she stood.
Besides, she probably possessed combat capabilities. If any of them could deal with problems as they arose, it was her. As Subaru stepped forward with trembling, wavering knees, he realized if he had to go over them, one by one, and decide whom he had to check on first, then he could only think of Rem.
He had any number of excuses he could cite. Asleep and immobile, Rem was completely defenseless. With her existence forgotten, there was no way to be sure what value it held to a potential enemy, so he couldn't simply leave her alone. In her own room, she had to be asleep. There was no reason she would have moved. Rem ought to be sleeping in the same room that very moment. With so many conditions piled together, wasn't it natural he would check on her first?
Subaru repeated unnecessary excuses over and over inside his head as he headed to the east wing of the mansion, to where Rem's bedroom was located. His breathing in disarray as his lungs convulsed. He clutched his chest as his loudly beating heart protested in concern. He abused his knees with rapid, tottering steps as he carefully hurried to catch up with the anomaly. Along the way, every door in the main wing had been flung open. This continued into the east wing, remaining the same as he reached the floor that contained Rem's bedroom. Rem's room was at the end of the corridor. The doors of every room before it remained open.
Shit, Rem!
Clicking his own tongue as he climbed up the stairs, Subaru ran toward the back of the corridor. The color of the evening sun thickly filled the corridor through the windows. Some kind of sweet aroma was mixed in with the serene air. Breathing hard, Subaru's own body was dyed orange as he quickened his ragged steps. His heart beat louder and faster, sending painful throbs and a feeling he could not describe racing through his eyes. Horror poured in, intruding upon his brain and leaving him able to think of only one thing. He had to find out if Rem was safe.
Who?
As Subaru's thoughts raced, his feet suddenly tripped 2 rooms short of his destination. Subaru's chest slammed into the corridor's floor, leaving him gritting his teeth at his own folly. Clenching the fist that had landed on the carpet, he tilted his head and came back to his senses. His feet had snagged on something. That's what had tripped him. He'd been focused solely on the doors of the rooms he'd been passing when something slender at his feet had made him fall. With everything dyed in the glossy light of the setting sun, it was difficult to tell what its original color had been. But the thing was slender and long, stretching out without interruption, and when Subaru's eyes followed it to its end point, he realized where it came from. It was no great mystery. It had simply tumbled out of the rent side of Subaru's abdomen.
Huh!
The right flank of his tracksuit had been cut clean. That was where the yellowy intestines had tumbled out. A large amount of blood was pooling beneath him. He wasn't sure if his right foot had stumbled over his small or large intestines, but at any rate, his innards had been expelled, seemingly clinging to their owner.
Ohu.
The instant he confirmed this fact, his throat was blocked by a rising clump of blood, and the world was dyed crimson. His trembling fingers tried to stuff back in the innards pouring out due to the pressure exerted by his belly, but he didn't have the strength. Then his knees failed as well, and before he realized it, he had tumbled forward onto the carpet. He didn't know what had happened, only that his belly had been fatally slashed.
I told you, didn't I? I promised you, yes?